This story begins with a question. What if there was another person just like you working in your place? Exercising in someone else's place. Even working. This kind of life was technically the life the MC says he had. In a world where extraordinarily powerful beings could exist, beings capable of devastating a world, where only debris and destruction would remain, he almost had the life he wanted. But he hadn't given up yet. In this place where there were monsters capable of destroying everything, there were also hunters. Since he hadn't given up, he was trying harder than anyone else to live a peaceful life. It might even sound ridiculous, but he was doing his best to rest later. However, this doesn't apply to everyone. The hunt this time was enormous, but it had to be taken down. The difference between him and other people was that he wasn't alone. When that monster was ambushed and captured, there were several of them. Everyone was fighting bravely. Life comes down to skills. The better and greater the individual's skill, the better their capability. And everyone in that group knew this well. That was his skill, and everyone there was a clone of himself. He needed to work, study, eat, and he had so many things he wanted to do. He also wanted to play, travel, hang out with friends. But why can people only do one thing at a time? And he always thought it would be great to have two bodies. So he managed to get two bodies. In a capital city, the day was calm and very beautiful, with people moving around all the time. There were also people discussing being awakened and their abilities. But there was also one person thinking he was tired. He looked around, and all he wanted was to get back home quickly. His name was Jong Sang-woon. He was a second-year student at Gyeongsang National University and aspired to have two bodies. A person with a microphone called for everyone's attention. His name was Park Won-tae, and he was a rank A hunter. He spoke to everyone, saying he was the hunter in charge of the 10th Awaken program. They were called in groups to proceed immediately. Jong Sang-woon was in that group. He thought it would soon be his turn. When his turn came, an assistant asked if he was from group 37, number 7, and confirmed his name as well. She scanned a bracelet on his arm for identification to clear him. She informed him that the identification was complete, and he could hand over his electronic devices and enter the portal. He paused for a moment in front of that portal. It seemed a bit scary, but he gathered his courage and jumped in. Immediately, the user identification and code announced that he was a Terran. The identification was complete, and he just collapsed, sitting on the ground, thinking, how long had I been out? His head felt like it was going to split from the pain. He looked up and found everything very strange. That was the bunker. Looking around, he saw that there were several other people. It seemed like he was the only one in bad shape. Next to him, he saw a girl who had just gained an incredible ability. And soon, people from various guilds appeared, wanting her to join one of them. Looking around, everything seemed cool. There was a guy next to him who congratulated him on his awakening and asked how he was feeling. He said he wasn't feeling well, and the guy said he would feel better soon. He asked if he had already checked his abilities. He said he hadn't yet but would check them right then. He started looking at his status window. His name was there. His strength was low, agility, vitality, dexterity, and magic. He was satisfied because the status window appeared just by thinking about it. However, he wasn't pleased at all with his stats. But what mattered most was the skill. The skill he had was a cloning summoning technique, and the amount of information would increase according to the level. When he discovered that his skill was a cloning technique, he became thoughtful. Afterward, he seemed a little more excited. He thought there should be no conditions to use it, so he would use it in daily life. He returned and asked if he had just checked his status. He said yes, but his stats weren't that good. The guy said not to be disappointed, unless he wasn't a newbie, as most people started with similar stats. He also wanted to know about his technique. He replied that it was a cloning technique, making a face that couldn't quite be read, whether satisfied or not. Still uncertain, Jong Sang-woon asked if it was good. From the guy's point of view, it wasn't worth much. He kept watching the guy talk but didn't respond that his technique wasn't a ghost. He was trying to encourage him and said it was better than awakening without any ability. He looked at the other people who were demonstrating their abilities and realized they were amazing abilities. And he saw that guild leaders didn't make much of an effort. Seeing everything there, he felt quite pressured. All he wanted to know was where the exit was, but he had to finish digitizing and registering. Now he was already in the area for verification. He didn't seem too excited. He was asked if his technique was cloning, and he said there was a 73% chance he had one or more abilities. It had already been done, and the Awakened registration certificate was issued to his identification bracelet. Looking at the bracelet, he thought he had finished faster than he imagined. When he thought about the cloning technique, he wondered what kind of ability that could be. Looking to the side, he said that his babies were working hard. He was referring to several computers in a very technological area. Those computers were connected to games, and he sat in a chair and started interacting. He observed the game for a while, then threw himself onto a bed and said he didn't know anything anymore. He thought that the game was becoming less popular every day, and the market price was decreasing. He had to pay rent and school fees, and all of that was driving him crazy. When he thought that if he had someone to work in his place, he remembered the cloning technique. Looking at his identification bracelet, he said he would have to try at least once. Then he got up and seemed focused. It looked like he was gathering energy, mana, or something. His body started to react, and he thought he wanted to summon the clone. That energy inside him seemed to accumulate and flow outward. It looked like an energy cloud, and suddenly there was a great flash. Arms and feet could already be seen, and another him appeared. Jong Sang-woon, upon seeing that, seemed surprised. He could clearly see the torso, thighs, and feet of the clone he had just created. Even though he was surprised, he He was excited because he had succeeded in cloning. He asked the being in front of him if it was a clone and received a positive response. He also wanted to know if he could switch with it, and the clone said yes and called him master. The young man was very excited about creating his first clone. After touching the clone, Jong Sang-woon found the whole thing very strange. He started slapping himself to make sure he was awake. He touched the clone again and saw that the body was real, without any illusion. He asked the clone to put something on. He threw a shirt and pants to it. He asked if it only needed an order. The clone confirmed that it did. Jong Sang-woon thought that first he would make it sit. That's when he realized that the clone could hear his thoughts. He only thought for it to stand up. He asked it to perform that movement 1,000 times, even though his clone was very exhausted. The young man noticed that the clone's stamina seemed similar to his own. At that moment, the phone in his pocket started ringing. Looking at the phone, he saw it was Jaeong-do, who was randomly sending messages. Jaeong-do was interested in knowing what ability Jong Sang-woon had acquired. With the phone in hand, he was just reading the messages. He was curious to know if he had gotten lazy abilities since he stayed in bed all day. Judging by his facial expression, those messages would be ignored. Curious to see if there were any changes in his status window after all the exercises his clone had done. On the other hand, Jumper George Lucas, owner of the Blink ability, S-class ranking from America, and leader of the Illuminati group. In the Illuminati's main building, the secretary said that of every 300 million people, 80% of them would awaken. According to the data on the Awaken program, every year they could expect it to be 100% within 5 years. George Lucas didn't think 5 years would take too long. Standing in front of his window, he observed the city from one of the tallest buildings. Meanwhile, his clone began running beyond exhaustion. Its presence was noticeable. As a result, it was evident that, even when it stopped to rest, it was only for a short time. Not to mention that even when people offered to help by giving water, the clone just resumed running. It probably wasn't allowed to perform other tasks. It was undeniable that this behavior caused some strangeness. It resulted in people feeling uncomfortable with its behavior. It just kept running. Shortly after, Jong Sang-woon decided to check his current weight. It should be noted that when Jong felt hungry, he ended up eating twice his usual amount but still managed to lose weight. It was undeniable when they said that the acquired ability was generally related to the person. While having the help of his clones, he noticed something. Firstly, the pain and exhaustion suffered by the clone couldn't affect him. Surely, if he took damage or used his energy beyond its limits, the clone would simply disappear. It was also noted that with every change his body went through, the clones were capable of copying his exact appearance. It could be stated that, even from a distance, it was possible to give an order just by thought. However, it was impossible for a clone to use the cloning ability. Otherwise, if the clone could use the cloning ability, there could be an infinite number of clones. Jong Sang-woon, in search of more information, was browsing the Awakened wiki. Due to his research, he could conclude, by looking at his data, that it was notable how his stats increased through training and executing the orders given to the clone. Knowing this, he could conclude that if he moved along with the clone, his score would be even higher. Aiming to further his research, he picked up a body training magazine, its cover's headline catching his attention for containing the phrase, "Steel Body," reminding him of the games he sometimes built. Through this, he realized that the maneuvers would work out well, being supervised by him and carried out by the clones. Not to mention, when he opened the app to check his bank balance, he grew a bit more worried each time, as his balance wasn't enough to cover expenses, possibly due to extra costs for food. Thus, he had already noticed it was time to get a part-time job. He needed to go to a website to check for job openings and opportunities. He would need to find a job in construction to train his body and also earn money. To do this, he would initially need to work alone, as the clone wouldn't be able to follow the process. Analyzing some possibilities, he found one that caught his attention. Immediately, he established a line of communication. The person on the other end of the line reported that no interview was needed, and he could start as soon as he was available. Despite stating that he could start the next day, he was persuaded to join that same day, making it clear how short-handed they were. The outcome wouldn't change much if he were paid correctly. Jong Sang-woon, along with his clone, headed to the logistics center. Once there, he looked for ways to justify someone else who looked very much like him. So, he began to brief his clone, giving him information on the name he should use and how he should act. Regardless, the building was bigger than he expected, and he wasn't sure where to go. At that moment, a voice called his attention, pronouncing his name. It was an older man who wanted to know what he was doing there. Since Jong had lost a lot of weight, Deok-chil took a moment to recognize him. Right after they greeted each other, he showed him the way to the office. It was a surprise for both of them, and as they said their goodbyes, they mentioned they'd see each other later. Jong Sang-woon was quite nervous about that new job. However, he noticed that his clone didn't express the same reaction. On the other hand, now he was also an awakened. Even so, he wanted to finish quickly and go home to eat ramen. Although he hadn't been working for long, he already felt exhausted. It felt like the work would never end. Looking around, he saw that the people there had abilities to move heavy objects. Even his clone was handling that type of work more easily. Just by looking, it was clear that the clone was doing well on his own. A while later, a break for rest was announced. Unlike the clone, he was very tired. At that point, Mr. Deok-chil appeared and kindly offered him soda and food. After speaking with Jong, he went over to chat with the copy, wanting to know his name. to which the clone introduced himself as Kim Jae-ju. Returning to Sangwon, he wanted to know how he was feeling being a university student and doing that kind of work for the first time. After hearing the question, he simply said it was very tiring. Even so, the courage of the two was noted, as newbies usually fled before that period. Jong thought that if it weren't for his bank balance, he would have fled too. The conversation then shifted back to the university he attended. In the meantime, the clone was eating and drinking everything that had been offered to the two of them. Mr. Deok-chil told him there was no need to be modest. He had a dream that his daughter could get into that university. Jong told him not to worry, as he wasn't good at studying either, yet he still managed to get into that university. For that older man, a special admission could be possible, which made him dream a little more. However, those words left Deok-chil thoughtful for some time. Nevertheless, he had a job proposal to make and asked if the young man was interested in another part-time job. He needed a moment to think. With the intention of persuading, the man said that instead of wearing himself out in that place, if he was fine with it, he could become his daughter's tutor. This was unexpected. However, the proposal didn't seem bad to him. Likewise, if he considered his bank balance, he would also accept that job. So, he would have to teach her all subjects. The man found it embarrassing to say this, but he was really bad at studying. 51 was his offer for 2 hours, 1 or 2 times a week. Considering the time spent, that wasn't a bad rate. The agreement was made, and the man would get in touch to discuss the details. It was very good for the body to stretch a bit. Besides, he thought that the job would work out. At times, he would check the status window to see if there were any improvements. This time, he was satisfied. He got a job and a status. Yes, it was good. After all, when people make so much effort, he felt happy to have found another job to do. He decided he would eat something before returning to that work. To his surprise, the bag was empty. Looking at the copy, he noticed it had eaten everything in there. The displeasure was noticeable on his face. The clone kept eating everything it had taken from the bag and drinking the soda. Although Jong was getting very angry, it was no use anymore. The next morning, his fatigue was evident. He told himself that everything was very exhausting. From that moment on, he would use clone number 1 for the part-time job. That feeling was as if number 1 was working hard. It was good enough, so he asked number 1 to return home. He would have liked to make it disappear, but the clothes would be left lying around. Surely, he would think better after eating. Suddenly, he heard a noise at the door and realized number 1 was back. He asked it to take a bath and change clothes. After cleaning up and changing clothes, it returned in front of its creator. Jong asked it to give him its hand. Jong knew he had to make a small wound on the clone. At that moment, he knew that number 1, being a clone, would dissolve into light when undone. That wasn't all. He trembled a lot just to do the simple task of pricking the clone with a small needle. It was just a small prick on one of the fingers. Certainly, he was doing that procedure to receive the regeneration status. Immediately afterward, he researched on Wiki to get extensive information about the procedure he had just performed. It would only show a sign if he continued doing it for another month. However, he found it scary to be stitching someone up with a needle, but he would have to do it frequently. As a result, he allowed it to eat ramen whenever it felt hungry, and even asked it to work out afterward. He also gave it another task, handed over the cell phone and told it to answer well every time it rang because he would be going out. Soon after, he was looking for the gym he saw advertised in a magazine. Suddenly, someone appeared calling him by name. It was someone he already knew well. It had been a long time since they had seen each other. Kim Jong-il wasn't sure if it was really him, as Jong had lost a lot of weight. This was because he had been working out a lot, and at that moment, he was heading to the gym. He just gained company. Kim was also willing to train, so he asked for the name of the gym. Jong Sang-woon said it was called Resistant Body and was nearby. There was nothing special that he could see except for the price. However, his companion mentioned that there was a very beautiful trainer. Even though he didn't want to exercise, he would definitely go along. When they arrived, they noticed a common structure, people working out, and state-of-the-art equipment. At the reception, they immediately noticed someone eating. Upon noticing that students were entering, the person apologized and commented that it was his lunchtime. Being very friendly, he explained about the grand opening promotion that was happening. Given that, Jong decided he would take advantage of the 3-month promotion and would also like supervision while using the equipment. It was said that it would be done as he wished, upon payment. Afterward, he went to one of the machines. He was complimented on his posture, but the instructor suggested he add more weight. Meanwhile, a student at the gym was working out. His performance caught the attention of the two who were chatting nearby. Other people also had their attention drawn by the young man who was working out intensely. Quickly, the instructor praised him, saying he seemed to have been working out for a long time. Curious, the instructor asked if he had been training for a long time, but he had just started. It was concluded that he had increased his muscle potential after becoming awakened. Moreover, the young man emphasized that his status level was around 2.1. Jong, who was observing the conversation, he thought that, considering the common ability of such a strong increase in strength, what would the other high-level hunters be like? It was clear that there was a reason why people only talked about hunters. He was finishing this line of reasoning when his phone rang. After taking it out of his pocket and answering, he realized it was Jang Deok-chil. He started a conversation by asking if he had arrived home safely and wanted to know if he had time at that moment. As soon as he knew there was time, he said everything was fine with him and that he would like him to come over to his house, as he wanted to talk in person. Already in the building and just waiting for the elevator, he thought that his friend, even after everything, had not enrolled in the gym. He couldn't exercise properly, as he would make people there envious. In fact, it was just a misunderstanding, as there wasn't a nice setup like everyone had said. In a way, that was possibly better, as he wouldn't need to worry about sending a clone in his place. After getting out of the elevator, he was already at the door of that man's house, but it was very noisy. So, he decided to get a little closer to the door to listen. It seemed like the daughter was very upset to hear that she would have a tutor. The father just said he was leaving, and she would tell him herself that she didn't want lessons anymore. You could see the shock on Mr. Diakshil's face when he realized that, upon opening the door, he had hit the boy's face. Since his daughter could also see the scene, as the door was still open. But they also gave him a cold compress pack to put on his head. Apologies were made, and it wasn't anyone's intention to hurt him. They also offered him a plate of sliced fruit. Just like Diakshil, the lady of the house was also surprised by his weight loss. Finally, Jong Sang-woon was at their house to teach the daughter. So, he started a conversation with Miss Haeyeon. It was inevitable that she was a little embarrassed. Jong Sang-woon introduced himself and, to confirm, asked if Haeyeon was interested in entering Jeongguk University. Intending to keep it brief, she simply affirmed. What would come next would be more awkward, as she would have to show her grades to start the lesson. Even so, she went to get her grades. Based on her performance, she had average grades. The attention shifted to what would be said next. Seeing an opening, Mr. Diakshil used work as an excuse to leave. Under this pretext, the head of the family quickly left. Jong, having reviewed the results of her activities, and noticing the young lady's shyness, pointed out that when he took the aptitude test, he didn't get a good result either. Thus, he managed to ease her embarrassment. Given her good mood, he declared that they would do their best. After finishing the tutoring and heading home, he realized there was a long way to go with that young lady. Moreover, in the following days, he also gave more lessons. Haeyeon was giving it her best. A while later, he realized she was smarter than he had expected. Since the number one wasn't there, it was concluded that he had gone to work. He thought about the phone issue. For now, one clone had gotten it, but if the number of clones increased, things could get complicated. He decided to go online to look for skills related to what he had. Then he found a page offering a familiar summoning ability for 100 million won, and another offering a telepathy skill scroll for 400 million won. However, he thought that if he had that much money, he would rather buy a house than a skill. Given that scenario, he realized it would take an eternity to buy just one of those abilities, since his balance was much lower. In the end, he was quite upset and decided to lie down for a bit, since he needed to become a hunter. With this in mind, he began to look for reports about hunters, since his ability was too good to just let him do manual labor. In order to become a hunter, he excitedly grabbed his yellow coat. An incident, which was called a great disaster by the world's population, disappeared, and it seemed like humanity would go extinct. Nowadays, people who hunt the remaining monsters are called hunters. For this, it was necessary to pass a test and receive a nationally recognized license. However, he would need some tips to pass the hunter test. A while later, he arrived at a place called the Hunter Association. In any case, he knew it was due to the vitality he had unlocked, but he felt better after sleeping for just a few hours. The presence of many hunters of various levels was notable. This was quickly noticed by Jong, not to mention there were many people waiting to take the test. In the meantime, it was announced that registration for the hunter's license test, which was happening in the basement, would close in 20 minutes. With all that, attention was rising. In front of the hunter license room, he knocked and opened the door, surprised to find many people there. His only thought was, why were there so many people in that place? In fact, he managed to draw the attention of some of the competitors to himself, not to mention that firm footsteps were being heard. Suddenly, Han Myung-hwan arrived, introducing himself as a Class C hunter, who would also be the inspector for that test. It was said that the license test was composed of 3 exams, 1 written, 1 practical, and 1 for aptitude. Also, the exam could only be taken once a year. The officials never forgot about cheaters. The pressure was intense. When it was announced that the hunter license test had begun, driving and talking with the earphones connected, the driver was receiving instructions from the boss, but he didn't seem to agree. The boss was not very patient. The person driving was an employee of the JM agency. Like Jong, he was also having financial problems. Moreover, he was keeping an eye on the time when the hunter exam would end. He was still on his way, although the results had already been released. That surprising result caught many off guard. Many said the test was strangely easy. Jung Sang-woon wanted to know how that could be. Since the questions were easy, it was just a matter of memorizing a few things. They also gave enough time to practice. The target was very close. As for the aptitude test, it was like a moral test from elementary school. For a job that involved risking one's life and using weapons, it was very easy. It was as if the government wanted people to do it. But he didn't want to think too much about it either. Right at the exit, he noticed a guild. They were there trying to recruit hunters. Suddenly, one of the representatives congratulated him for passing the hunter license exam. He was offered a card from the JM agency. Kang Junmo was considering the possibility of, every time he bought an item or looked for a monster to hunt. While listening to that JM agency promotion, the status window seemed to have changed. It brought information about changes in his status, with the number of clones he could summon increasing to 2. Aware of that information, he informed the agent that he would contact them at another time. After driving to that place to find some work, he found himself talking to himself but hoped to be remembered by that young man, who was already at home, prepared to do another cloning. After creating another clone, He was eager to see the work of number 2. With a group of 3 individuals, they were prepared to become hunters. In the meantime, the agent had already managed to distribute most of the business cards. He also hoped they would contact him. He was heading toward the Haeseong Guild, the number 1 in Korea. Indeed, he would have to accept the value as per the agreement that was on the list. Kan Junmo, just by looking, realized that something was strange on the list. Looking at all the lists, the values seemed odd. However, that strangeness caused discomfort to the person who was giving that opportunity. He had to hear that he needed to be more shrewd. If they followed the rules and did everything they should, what would remain would be the profits. They also told him not to be so sensitive about the guild's business. Even though he opposed all that, he had to remain silent and leave. If he had known he would have such a hard time like that, he would have stayed quiet. He paid attention to the phone that was ringing. After answering, he identified himself and then heard that the young man who took the card from him, Jong Sang-woon, wanted to meet him. The meeting was set in a cafe, and upon arrival, he noticed he was already being awaited. He apologized for being late and ordered something to drink. While drinking iced coffee, Jong expressed his intentions of wanting to go to a safe place for beginners to hunt. Next, he asked about his ability, and the response was that it was cloning. Like other people, he formed his own opinion, already with his preconception about the cloning ability. Thinking they couldn't do anything physically, he had to reconsider his judgment, saying he thought the ability was amazing, and handed over the contract. He also mentioned the first hunting ground he would recommend, saying it wasn't dangerous. Seeing that it wouldn't be a problem, this caused some satisfaction in the client. He knew there was also a second hunting ground where it was possible to hunt for a long time. He concluded by saying there were other lower-class monsters, like giant rats. Jong Sang-woon, analyzing the 2 places, decided they were ideal for him. He also liked the selling rate of the items he would collect. In that way, he showed that he wanted to continue with that contract. Since he liked both locations, he was asked to choose one of them. However, he wouldn't choose just one. With that, the real Jung Sang-woon was introduced alongside the clone. So, it was he who signed the contract. The whole situation felt a bit strange. For better performance, he decided he would spend time at both locations. Since the real Jung Sang-woon had joined the conversation, the agent was quite impressed. Moreover, he was hearing that he wanted to hunt in both places. All of this reminded him of the past, when he had the chance to meet someone with the cloning ability. At that time, it seemed like something very remarkable. That was when he asked to see a demonstration. It was essential to focus. Next, other images identical to the original appeared. That performance was outstanding. In the face of that splendid ability, the agent was very impressed. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the clones of that individual began preparing for a combined attack. This made the agent quite scared. Then, the attack began. In no way could he believe what he was seeing. Shortly after, he realized they were illusions, far from being real clones. Even so, he thought he could touch them, but his hand passed through the emptiness of that illusion. However, it caused no real damage. The individual thought his ability would be great for drawing the monster's attention. At that moment, the agent concluded that he had seen enough of that ability. At present, he realized that the ability he saw the other time was infinitely different. After observing Jung Sang-woon's clone, he noticed that his clone was special, because he hadn't realized it was a clone when he looked at the contract. Not even when he was drinking coffee. It was the first time seeing an ability like that. It was so hard to believe that he decided to ask if they were twins. However, he just found that question very funny. It seemed reasonable for the agent to think that way. After putting his arm around the number 1's shoulder, he confirmed that it was his clone. He also mentioned having another clone, which at that moment was at the gym. Likewise, this caused surprise. He didn't have the information that clones could increase muscle mass. Jong stated that he grew stronger as the clone did. He confessed that he even increased his stats by using the clone. Now, the agent was convinced that this wasn't the ability of a mere Class F hunter. By the way, going back to the hunting field, there was still a doubt, which was whether it would be a problem for the same person to enter different places at the same time. The agent thought it would be difficult to enter at the same time, because there was a record of each individual's entry. However, hearing those words wasn't satisfying. He had a solution to that problem and would talk to the Hunters Association about that fact. A demonstration of his ability would only be possible the following night. So, a meeting at the Hunters Center was scheduled for 2 days later. The contract was mentioned. However, it had already been stamped. When the agent suddenly stood up, he startled his client. But he was just excited about his cooperation. An agreement was made between them. Both were satisfied. 2 days later, Jong was waiting in front of the mentioned building. Upon arriving, Agent Junmo soon greeted the hunter. By the way, the hunter had arrived early. He had, in fact, hurried so as not to make the agent wait, and also because he was eager to see the association inside the Hunter's Center. Shortly after a ticket was issued, the hunters were called to the counter according to their number. When his turn came, he was asked if he wanted double access to the hunting field. Only this way would he make better use of his ability, as another bracelet was needed for the clone. Therefore, the request for the double access document was taken to the chief. After a while, paperwork was handed over, which would have to be submitted to the civil service office, and then a test taken. The amount of paperwork shocked both of them. Agent General, being kind, offered to handle the paperwork while Jong headed to the demonstration room. They went on to fulfill their respective tasks. Concentration was needed to successfully complete that action. Although he had done that maneuver a few times and knew what he was doing. Even so, It was embarrassing to see his copy undressed in front of the woman conducting the test. Only after passing the test could a bracelet be produced for the clone. The request for an identical identification bracelet had been completed, thus giving the clones freedom to enter the hunting areas, making simultaneous entries and exits possible. And wherever the original entered, the clones could enter as well. The engineer expressed clear interest in the clone. However, the clone was taken by the original, who was now in possession of the bracelet. It was certainly a shame, as the engineer probably had great ideas for the clone to carry out. Feeling quite accomplished, he showed his arm and announced that the authentication was already done. Finally, all the preparations for the solo hunt were ready. Agent Junmo asked if he was already heading to the hunting field, and that was the plan since his schedule was free. There was some curiosity about why number 2 was wearing a mask, especially since many people were interested in him. They were being observed by someone. The master of the Haesung Guild, Shin Haesung, wanted to know who it was and realized it was Junmo. To get his attention, he shouted loudly, calling Agent Kang Junmo by name. After that, he made a dramatic entrance, jumping from above and landing nearby. That man seemed to know Junmo and remarked that they were meeting there as well. In fact, Mr. Shin Haesung is a very well-known person. It was quite surprising to learn that Junmo was still in the hunting business. Jong Sangwoon also knew that man. Mr. Junmo didn't seem very comfortable with his presence. Even so, he greeted him, respecting the hierarchy. That situation brought some good laughs to the guild master. He stopped out of curiosity about the presence of that boy. At that moment, the young man was introduced as a hunter from the association. Looking at the boy in the hoodie, he said he understood. Also, by looking at his physique, he could tell he was a rank F. Trying to stay serious, that man asked what had happened to Mr. Junmo, who used to supervise C and D ranks. Immediately after, laughing a lot, he couldn't believe he was now looking after a rank F dressed in a hoodie like that. Mr. Junmo wasn't feeling well. Shortly after, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was his protege, there to offer support. However, that man was very satisfied with making fun of Mr. Junmo. Even in the presence of that individual trying to impose his greatness, the young hunter didn't let his presence diminish. He put on a happy face and showed his kindness. He said how honored he was to meet the master of the number 1 guild in the country. Those words pleased the master, and he even started to see the young man differently. Taking the opportunity, the young man listed the man's achievements. Shin Haesung is number 1 in the monopoly of dungeons and also first place in the restriction of hunting grounds, among other facts. He knew he had no idea what to do standing before someone so notorious. The master acknowledged the young hunter's courage. After all, that man has a very strong presence, with the goal of testing the hunter's ability, to see if it was as good as his courage. Jong just looked back, noticing the presence of that man close to him. He was definitely very lucky because, at that moment, that man's assistant arrived looking for him. He could tell the assistant was there, and they couldn't keep doing as they pleased. He just said goodbye to them, but he still wanted one last thing, which was to know the young hunter's name. Jong Sangwoon was quite clever and asked the man to find out for himself. The guild master acknowledged that the young man was somewhat amusing and said goodbye to Mr. Junmo. The assistant was informing the master that he couldn't just walk around inside the association like that. Sometime later, inside Mr. Junmo's car, he thanked him for the courtesy shown earlier. Jong mentioned that he couldn't just stand by and watch. The relationship between Junmo and the Haesung Guild was conflicted, with just a simple search about the JM agency. But what he saw next caught his attention because there wasn't much information related to it online. While doing his research, he came across a rumor about Agent Kang Junmo, saying he had been fired from the Haesung Guild. Now it was clear why hunters didn't want to join the agency. It was due to fear of retaliation from the Haesung Guild. Junmo, hearing that information from Jong, was curious why he wanted to join that agency, simply because of the payment rate. Moreover, he could count on Junmo if there was something he couldn't handle in the industry or the guild. Those words made Mr. Junmo aware of his responsibility. However, at the gym, number 2 was training to failure and beyond. All that effort was making the gym manager very tense. Other people also felt uncomfortable just watching someone put in so much effort. In training, even though it was intense, the clone would do it without complaint. However, the phone in his pocket started ringing. A message from the original said to finish the training, take a shower, and then wait in front of the gym at 4 o'clock. Having received that order, he hydrated himself and went to carry out the rest of the command. The gym instructor was relieved when he noticed that the boy had stopped pushing himself so hard. The liquid dripping on the floor had the appearance of a hot air bubble. Only with the right equipment could someone endure being there. That effort was to fill the bench on his back. After completing that mission, he was already leaving the designated area. Jong was watching the effort he had to make. He reported that wearing the mask was quite difficult. That was why, even though the slime field was safe, hunters didn't go there. Jong knew he couldn't do it for too long. Junmo said he could hunt until the container was full, and when it was full, it could be replaced at the rented locker. However, there was a suit that helped a lot and could last longer. He wasn't sure if he could last 2 hours, let alone 6 hours. But if it were number 2, he could. And soon, he put on a mask and specific outfit. Number 2 also had Jong's support and encouragement. Now, he wanted to head to the horned rabbit hunting field next. He noticed that number 1 was missing. He also remembered that he hadn't picked up number 1 at the gym, who was waiting at the agreed spot. In the car, Jong was driving. He asked if Jong would continue calling the clones number 1 and number 2. He replied that, since they were identical, it would be confusing if they had names. The agent said that since they were clones, names weren't necessary. He just confirmed with Junmo whether they used weapons to hunt horned rabbits, to which he replied yes. He also wanted to know if he needed to prepare equipment. He was told that it wasn't necessary, as weapons could be rented at the hunting field. He also mentioned that one day he should have his own equipment. However, he was startled by a sound he heard. Junmo said that they had finally arrived at Yujangsan Field. The place was heavily guarded by security officers. You could see them everywhere, guiding the hunters. Jong said that the place was huge and couldn't even compare to the slime field. However, the agent said that was because that field was famous, as it was where a monster invasion had occurred. Thinking about it, Jong thought he had heard about that before. Basically, the portal was disconnected from the outside world. Junmo said that during the invasion, most of the strong monsters were defeated, and only Class F and E monsters remained. Jong asked if there wouldn't be any complaints about the noise. The two entered the hunting area. It was quite large and full of people. Pointing to a shop, Junmo said that Jong could rent equipment there. The vendor said that the rifle, night vision goggles, space rental, earplugs, and 400 rounds of ammunition would cost 700,000 won in total. Crying, Jong said that was a lot. Junmo said that most of the cost was for the ammunition, but that it would be reimbursed as he caught rabbits, which were worth the same as 1 bucket of slime. Looking at the map, Junmo said they would be on the 3rd floor of Building F. Jong said he didn't know the area was divided into sections. Junmo said they had arrived, and that was the spot they would use. Suddenly, a very loud noise startled Jong. There were many hunters in the area. Some were repeatedly missing their shots. Some had their prey in hand, and some had captured many. Jong was surprised to see them in action. Pulling him out of his shock, Junmo told him that his seat was number 4. He asked if Jong was confident in his shooting skills. Jong asked who he thought he was and said that he only missed 3 shots during the hunter exam. He said he felt sorry for the rabbits. He adjusted his gear and got ready. He said the rabbits wouldn't be able to escape the eagle eye of Yujangsan. Junmo was thankful that the others were wearing earplugs and couldn't hear that. Aiming, Jong spotted a rabbit. He told Junmo that he had found one. Aiming slowly to hit it, he placed his finger on the trigger and got ready. He felt sad for the horned rabbits. 3 hours later at the hunting field, Jong was desperate. He hadn't hit a single rabbit. He said it made sense that he hadn't succeeded. Everything was going fine with his aim, but they seemed to have heard some noise. After that, the rabbit fled. The moment he fired, the rabbit ran away. Even Junmo had left. He couldn't even earn back the money he had spent, and he wondered if he should call it a day. He called number 1 and asked him to hunt the horned rabbits. If he managed to catch one, he was to send a message saying 1, and if the bullets ran out, he should call. He sighed in exhaustion and said he was going home. Already at home, lying down, he checked the system for notifications of increased mana. He thought that at least number 2 was hunting slimes well. Looking at the status, he noticed they were steadily growing. He remembered when Shin Haesung bullied him and said he still had a long way to go. As soon as he woke up, he thought that hunting rabbits had been a disaster. He hadn't expected it to be so difficult. Getting ready to sleep, he hoped that number 1 could at least catch one rabbit. While he was sleeping, the phone started to vibrate. Many messages from number 1 could be seen on the screen. The scene shifts to the next day. At the JM agency, the agent was calm until he received a call. He answered, informing that it was JM agency. The person on the other end asked for confirmation if this was the agency to which hunter Jong Sang-woo belonged. The person introduced himself as the manager of the slime hunting field and asked Mr. Junmo to come to the hunting field. He asked, not understanding why. The hunting field manager explained that Jong had been hunting for over 24 hours straight. In a hurry, Mr. Junmo said he would go to the hunting field as soon as he could. At Jong's house, he woke up peacefully. He checked his phone to see how Clone 1 was doing. Jong was stunned for a moment, not understanding how there could be so many messages. But he briefly reviewed the messages in disbelief. At the slime hunting field, Mr. Junmo seemed surprised by the number of slimes Jong had hunted. Many tanks were full of slime. Jong's clone had filled all the storage containers in just one day. The soldiers around were incredulous at such a feat. The clone was covered in slime. Mr. Junmo called to report the good result. Jong answered, seeming distracted. Excited, Mr. Junmo said that the clone was very efficient in hunting and that he could already stop the clone. Jong then said he was happy to know and asked if he could send the cleaners to the horned rabbit hunting field. Looking at the pile of horned rabbits, Jong said the monster carcasses were already almost blocking the path. The people around seemed surprised by the size of the pile. Some of them wanted to sneak away with some of the carcasses. Others wondered if he had really hunted all those horned rabbits by himself. Interested in such skill, a recruiter approached the clone. He quickly showed his business card. The recruiter asked Clone 1 if he was already part of the guild. Without orders to respond, Clone 1 simply ignored the recruiter. Trying to remain calm, the recruiter thought it was normal, and that most talented people were weird. Another recruiter nearby said it was useless to try. He pointed out that several other recruiters had tried to talk to Clone 1, but they were equally ignored. even those from big guilds. While the recruiters discussed, one of them quietly approached, handing more ammunition to Clone 1. After sending his clone to continue hunting and leaving Mr. Junmo to handle the carcasses, he praised the clone for the good work. The clone was very happy with the compliment. He quickly reloaded his rifle and went back to hunting the horned rabbits. People seemed surprised by this. They realized they had underestimated the clone's potential, even receiving only 50% of the status, technically limited to just half of what Zhang could do. The clones were like machines in terms of precision, with great focus and no hesitation in making decisions. While distracted, his student was calling him insistently. She asked Zhang what he was thinking about so much. He just changed the subject, telling Heian that she had improved a lot, but she insisted on knowing what her teacher was thinking. Minimizing the situation, Zhang just said he was thinking about how well he did in the hunting field. Heian was surprised and very excited to discover that her teacher was a hunter. He even said that he forgot to mention it, and that he was kind of a beginner. Interested in this fact, she asked Zhang about the hunter who was at the top of the rankings, a new hunter nicknamed the God of Eagle Eye Shooting from Ujangson, to which he replied he didn't know. Heian explained that this hunter was one of the most searched on the hunter's wiki that day, after he hunted over 200 rabbits. The hunter, being mysterious, was very cool for not saying a single word to anyone, and that mystery was the reason he was so popular. After watching the video they made of the mysterious hunter, however, he was surprised by the nickname. Heian told Zhang that her dream was to be a hunter. Zhang asked if she was awakened, to which she confirmed, adding that she had the license but was afraid to go to the hunting fields. She fell silent for a moment. Hesitantly, she asked Zhang if he would take her hunting if she scored well on the test. Confidently, he said it was no problem, as long as she passed the university test. Very excited, Heian asked if he was serious, which he confirmed and explained that he knew of some safe hunting fields. She asked for a promise from him. Zhang sighed for a moment, but made a pinky promise. She said he couldn't change his mind anymore. Leaving Heian's room, Zhang ran into Heian's mother. She asked if the lesson had gone well, and he replied that it had. The student, curious to hear what was being said, pressed herself close to the door. He said goodbye and was about to leave, but Heian's mother asked if he wanted to eat before going, and he said he had to go somewhere. Still listening behind the door was Heian. Very happy, Heian threw herself onto the bed, thinking that she had an appointment with Zhang. She said to herself that he was a hunter, and thanks to that, the conversation had gone well. She hadn't liked it at first since he was an acquaintance of her father, but his image was pleasing. He felt good and taught well, and he had an honest look. Besides, she thought he was handsome. She didn't even understand it herself, so she would study hard to impress him. Already at the horned rabbit hunting base, Zhang was taking the elevator, wondering if they had already collected the rabbit corpses. Junmo was surprised by Zhang's arrival. Zhang asked if he was there too. Junmo replied yes, because he had to check the collection process, and asked where Zhang had been, to which Zhang replied that he had been tutoring. Junmo said he had called many collection teams before, but never so many at once. A total of 352, and a lot of people. Junmo asked if he had checked the payment yet, but Zhang said he hadn't because he had turned off notifications. On the phone screen, the bank balance showed 32,720,301. Shocked, Zhang looked at the phone in disbelief. He asked if that amount was really correct. Junmo replied that since his hunting skills were very good, he had raised the payment to that of a rank E hunter. Zhang thanked him and said he wasn't even rank E yet. Suddenly, a guy caught their attention, making everyone look at him, as they wanted to know what he was up to. The man asked Junmo if he was the manager while pointing at number 1. Junmo replied yes and asked who the man was. He said he was a hunter whose prey had been stolen. He said all the horned rabbits he had targeted had been stolen. He demanded they pay for his losses. Sweating, Junmo wondered what to do. He told Zhang that he thought they had chosen the wrong place, and Zhang replied that he didn't even know people like that existed. Zhang stood there thinking. Suddenly, he said he had an idea, and Junmo asked what it was. The man asked what they were whispering about. The man said he wasn't mean and only wanted 10% of the total payment. Zhang laughed at what the man said. Irritated, the man asked what he was laughing at. Zhang told him to relax because that guy wouldn't be coming back there for a few days. He said they should go, but the man, angry, asked where they were going. Junmo also asked where they were going, and Zhang replied they were heading to a nearby cafe. Furious, the man turned around and tried to punch Zhang, shouting at him not to ignore him. But Zhang ordered number 1 to jump in front. Number 1 jumped in front of the punch. He took the punch head on and went flying far away, hitting many obstacles along the way, until he crashed into a building pillar. He probably got injured after colliding with several things along the way. The man, in shock, said he hadn't punched that hard. Filming a video, Zhang called the man evil, drawing attention to him. Zhang asked Junmo if people would let such an act of violence pass in the sacred hunting ground, to which Junmo replied they wouldn't. The man tried to deny what he had done, but everyone had seen it. Zhang said it would be really bad if the video were uploaded to the hunter web. He needed to do something about that video, as it could damage his and the guild's reputation. Asking if he was right, Zhang placed a hand on the man's shoulder and told the man to go his own way. The man agreed but remained very angry. Life went on. Zhang wanted to know if he was from the High Sun Guild. Junmo said that's exactly it, and that he thought the man was from the High Sun Guild. Zhang asked if there were people like that in the Haisung Guild, and Junmo replied that since the guild was big, there were all kinds of people. But how did Zhang know the man was from the Haisung Guild? Junmo said that ever since they had arrived at the hunting field, the man had been watching them. He said this must be the work of the Haisung Guild. Zhang said it must be revenge. Junmo said that Zhang was right. They must have thought that number one was another hunter who had made a contract with him. He said that even before hiring, the hunters from JM Agency were already being harassed. JM Agency hunters don't last long and just leave, and currently, only a few rank F hunters remain. He added that, even now, he couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be sabotage from the Haisung Guild. Zhang said he already knew that, even before teaming up with him, so there was no need to worry, as he wouldn't betray him. Image without text. Zhang said he wasn't just going to let them threaten him, and mentioned that he had a plan to get stronger quickly. He began to explain the details of his plan. However, the agent thought it all sounded very dangerous, but he continued listening to each dangerous detail of the plan. Zhang asked what he thought of the plan. Junmo said he had never thought of it that way, and asked if 2 p.m. was good. Zhang replied that it was perfect. He then said they would meet at the Hunter's Market. The Monster Hunter's Market, which deals with weapons and other parts and equipment for hunters, has always been active since the emergence of the Awakened. But a type of department store entered the Hunter's Market and took over part of that industry, because they had all the equipment a hunter could want. He equips a set of armor, while the store owner explains that it was titanium armor and would certainly protect against monster attacks. After saying it was light and comfortable, he turned his attention to the dagger, and pointed out that since he would mainly fight using weapons, that titanium dagger was good enough. Needing more equipment for the clones, he asked for 2 more sets of that armor, which the store owner quickly prepared. Shifting focus, he asked Zhang if he needed some abilities, to which Zhang confirmed. Mr. Junmo also asked about familiar abilities, though he didn't expect to find them there. Even so, they searched one of the shops. They looked at some ability orbs, looking closely to find a suitable ability. Zhang found a good ability. Upon checking the description further, he noticed the high price of the ability orb. That hefty price left Zhang frustrated. Somewhat embarrassed, he asked Mr. Junmo for an advance. A bit reluctantly, Mr. Junmo said he could lend up to 50 million won at that moment. Zhang said that was helpful and that he could handle the rest of the amount in installments. Mr. Junmo told him not to worry because, if everything went according to plan, they could recover the money quickly. Back at his house, Zhang analyzed the orb for a while. Then he studied the instruction manual. To acquire the ability contained in the orb, it was necessary to infuse mana into it or press a button. He opted for the activator button, as he didn't have control over mana. So, he placed his hand on the orb. He looked at it hesitantly for a brief moment. Slowly, he pressed the activator button. A blinding light radiated from the orb, and intensified until it covered the entire room. The familiar ability was successfully created. The power of the ability was to share senses with the chosen target. Zhang looked at his own hands for a moment, until he noticed that the ability orb had disappeared, having been used. He simply clenched his fists in anticipation to test his new skill. He immediately summoned his clones 1 and 2, who promptly appeared to answer his call. Still equipped in their new armor, he called his clones to test the new ability together. Later, he met with Mr. Junmo to say that he had an idea to get stronger more quickly. Zhang asked what he thought of the hunting results. Mr. Junmo obviously said the results were excellent and far exceeded expectations. However, he emphasized the clone's exceptional dexterity, energy, and reaction, which produced an outcome he had never imagined. He even mentioned a recent incident where Zhang ordered the clone to take a punch from another hunter and react. Not only did the clone have perfect reaction time, but it could have defeated the other hunter. The question was if he meant that, even with low stats, a clone had great body control. Zhang confirmed and said he would use that to his advantage. A bit confused, Mr. Junmo asked how he planned to do that. Zhang began explaining that, first, he needed 2 places. Training grounds to practice his close range and long range combat skills. One clone would enroll in hand-to-hand combat classes. The other clone would go to a shooting range to practice skeet shooting. And of course, he would take the clones' training to the next level so they could surpass their limits. They would skip the theoretical and go straight to practice. In the combat classes, the instructor showed how to disarm an opponent, while the shooting instructor was teaching trap shooting. Clone 1 would go directly to duel with the instructor, and Clone 2 would practice trap shooting with a pistol. Each of the clones was ready to begin training, Clone 1 with his batons and Clone 2 with a real pistol. Both clones were completely calm. The training began at the command of the instructors. Clone 1 disarmed the opponent almost instantly. Meanwhile, Clone 2 hit the target with ease, surprising their respective instructors without showing any expressions. Zhang summarized by telling Mr. Junmo that he needed the familiar skill. Mr. Junmo didn't understand why. After all, it was a skill to share vision with pets. What would he do with that? Zhang added that all senses were shared through the skill, and all sensations would be connected. And he told Mr. Junmo to imagine Zhang using the skill while the clones were fighting or practicing shooting. Then, he simply focused. He activated the familiar skill while concentrating. The skill was triggered, connecting the senses between him and his clones. At that moment, he could experience everything his clones were feeling. So, he connected with Clone 1. From Clone 1's heightened concentration to the ideal distance during the fight, the angle of his joints, the balance of his body. Zhang felt Clone 1 dodging. He continued feeling the movement and the flow of force. With Clone 2, He could feel the breathing during the shot, the aim and the direction of his vision, how to hold the weapon correctly, the control of the weapon's recoil and everything else. He could feel all the movements of his clones in their entirety. Zhang slowly opened his eyes. He had felt every sensation of his clones, and now he could access all their senses. From that moment on, he would have all the information gathered by the clones. He could now have everything they could offer, all by using that item. He could already see the first results, and the experiences he had just had. He felt the air pressure as the baton passed by the clone, even the smell of gunpowder, and the force of the recoil, including the fatigue that was now affecting him. Even though he hadn't moved, everything was being done by the clones, simply by sharing the senses. After having experienced the same movements as the clones, and having the same body, he was already able to imitate their movements in that moment. He also improved his stats. Seeing the results, he decided to try both fighting and shooting, and by connecting with number 1, he could see who he was fighting against. After focusing, he activated the familiar skill. That way, he could connect with the clones, who were in other places. One clone was fighting. It was a tough lesson. The instructor, seeing him watching the clone, could see strength in him too. The students were confused when the trainer personally decided to fight against the clone. The two were ready to start the fight, with sharp movements and a lot of determination. The instructor noticed that his attacks lacked experience, but the defense was different. He was reading the movements and dodging the attacks perfectly. Noticing this, the instructor started to push harder. He took advantage of his good defense to attack. The clone, in that way, showed a lot of strength. There was a moment when the clone began to follow the same strategy the trainer was using. Thus, he also started attacking. At that moment, it could be said that he was copying the trainer's movements. This way, the instructor could push even harder, as the clone could defend himself. The blows were becoming more powerful. Even so, the clone managed to dodge, leaving all the other students astonished. More and more, the clone advanced on the instructor, even managing to land some hits. For a moment, it made the instructor a bit uncomfortable. He felt pressured, since the opponent was confident he could land a hit. The trainer saw an opening and the counterattack was ready. Because of that, the clone's attack had no effect. Not even understanding what was happening, he suffered a counterattack that was executed masterfully. The instructor went hard on him. The other students knew that the trainer was an exceptional person. All the results of the fight were transmitted to the original body in real time. The trainer, with a smile, found the situation dangerous. He asked the clone if he wanted to continue. Zhang asked number 1 if he was okay. At that moment, he just gained momentum and repeated the jump the trainer had done a moment ago. It seemed that all his movements were impressive. This left his opponent surprised. Zhang also found his clone quite bold. After jumping, he stopped in front of the trainer and asked him to accept another round of fighting. However, this made his trainer proud. After that result, he moved on to number 2's experience. He concentrated to connect with him. However, he was target shooting. A guy was feeling full of himself after apparently hitting his target. Even his partner celebrated. As soon as Zhang started to join that experience, he realized number 2 was even shooting at the clay targets of the person next to him. However, he would just focus on the shooting. He shared the same sensations, with the upper body stable. He asked him not to move and only rotate in the direction, following the target's trajectory. When the aim and the supposed trajectory aligned, he asked him to remember every little detail. Zhang was determined to take advantage of all the opportunities created by the clones. To get his own movements confirmed again, he needed to focus. However, all the effort of switching between the clones was becoming exhausting. He realized his mana was depleted. He started to feel dizzy and asked everyone to rest. The movements of the clones were intense, so they neither hesitated nor feared anything. Next time, he would go with them because he wanted to test what would happen if he tried himself. Heian spotted Zhang from afar and immediately called out to him. Since he wasn't expecting her, it was a surprise. He even became worried about her being out late at night, but she was just studying at the library. He thought it was a lie, but she insisted that she had already done her homework. Some rough-looking guys were talking about Zhang. They seemed to be waiting for him. Meanwhile, someone was following Kang Zhenmo and reporting on what was happening. He apologized, saying he was trying to intimidate, but it turned out someone was recording. The person on the phone was trying to explain, but the person on the other end wasn't pleased at all. Despite saying he would figure it out, the person gave new orders to stay away from the Yujangsen field. The instructions were that, even if something happened, it had nothing to do with the Haisum Guild. It was also said that he would only be seen as a street thug. And then the call ended. After that, the man became very angry and threw the phone against the wall. After the phone hit the wall and fell to the floor, he began stomping on it. He didn't seem content and now wanted to deal with the situation. The leader wanted to know what had happened and why he was upset this time. It had been a while since they last saw each other, and he even put on a friendly face. He wanted to know why he hadn't done anything. Just let it go. Even though he had left there to join the number 1 guild in the country. Since the guild didn't want him to get too close to the hunting field, they needed to know if there was still work for him there. They talked among themselves and were willing to find some work for him. They were chatting when a scene on the other side of the street caught his attention. It was Zhang and his student talking. The man recognized the young man from recording the video. It was possible he was looking to settle things. He watched from a distance, and his companion asked if that was the boy. Sitting there, relaxed, Zhang was talking to Heian, who was asking what he was doing there. Someone called their attention. He was walking toward them, saying something about his brother. Finally, those people grew tired of just talking about him from a distance and decided to approach. The student wanted to know who those people approaching them were. The man behind the leader was very angry after everything that had happened. Jong called for number 1 and number 2 mentally and realized he needed reinforcements. After that, he asked those people if he could help them. Although their leader seemed very calm, one of them was a bit agitated. Hyung said he had heard that Jong had a video showing his brother making a mistake. He claimed that if the video was deleted, they would leave peacefully. Holding his phone, Jong asked if they were saying that if the video was deleted, everything would be fine. However, he mentioned there was no guarantee that if he deleted the video, they would let them go. The negotiator found the young man quite sharp. He commented that the young man wasn't an amateur and also said it wouldn't be easy to let him get away unscathed. However, since the young man hadn't been smart enough to delete the video when he filmed it, now it didn't matter. Jong told his student to run as soon as she found the right moment. Looking at those people, he could see a certain difference. However, he didn't expect to be in such a difficult situation so soon. The difference was that now he was going to fight them. That behavior made them laugh at him. The leader told them to go settle the score with the arrogant boy. On the very first strike, Jong managed to dodge. However, more followed in quick succession. He couldn't dodge them. The fight there was 2 against 1. For someone like him, with little combat experience, it quickly caused concern from Miss Haeyeon, who, after taking a few hits, fell to the ground. Despite her efforts, it didn't go well in the first fight. The student and her tutor were on the ground, not understanding what was happening. A power began to build up. Miss Haeyeon asked them to step back. Jong was also surprised to realize that the young lady was using powers. He also noticed that she was still a beginner, as she was trembling. 2 of the 3 people who were chasing them were surprised because there was an awakened one. However, the leader told them not to be scared just because of a high school girl. He asked the young lady if they wouldn't step back from what she was about to do. Young showed no fear of the power being displayed. With no other option, she threatened again, saying that if he came closer, she would release the power. He ignored her warnings, leaving her no choice but to attack him. The attack was directed at the man who was approaching. The 2 were startled and feared for Hyung. He was covered in smoke for a while. However, in his view, awakened ones were as common as rolling stones on the street. After the attack, his clothes were burned, so he couldn't brag about it. He said she still had a lot of growing up to do. When he tried to attack the young lady, her tutor intervened, because their fight against them wasn't over yet. But this time, he managed to land a solid hit on the target, leaving his student more than surprised. He wasn't playing around. Dazed by the punch, Gun-suk put his hand on his face and took a step back. His friend, yelling loudly and preparing to punch, ran towards Jong. Very focused, Jong thought he had to fight like number 1. Looking at the opponent's shoulder, he thought he had to move in advance to avoid the attack. He managed to dodge while thinking that attacking isn't just about swinging your arms, from the legs to the waist, from the waist to the arms. He landed a blow on the opponent, sending him flying. As he attacked, another opponent was already rushing in to hit him. He couldn't dodge and struck the opponent while taking a hit. Even after taking the hit, he remained standing, unlike his opponent. Tired, he breathed heavily. Gun-suk commented that he knew how to fight, and said he hesitated to hit someone who didn't even know how to throw a punch. Jong prepared to keep fighting, still feeling the pain from the last hit. He said he managed to hit him, but from the strength, he must have a strength-enhancing ability. He said he couldn't afford to get hit by him. Rushing forward, Gun-suk said he was coming. Jong barely dodged and managed to counterattack, making it clear that he was capable too. Gun-suk, furious, cursed at Jong. He ran towards Jong, intending to grab and hit him. Jumping, Jong managed to dodge while landing a punch on the opponent. While complaining, Gun-suk tried to throw a punch, but Jong had already prepared his own punch, which hit Gun-suk squarely. Chang-won called out to Gun-suk. After landing his punch, Jong noticed something. Gun-suk was foaming at the mouth with rage. With all his strength, he prepared a punch. As he prepared the punch, he said Jong was finished. Jong thought he had to dodge the punch. Suddenly, someone grabbed his leg. Looking down, he saw that it was Gun-suk's friend holding him. He realized he was in trouble, but he kept his eyes on the large man. With all his might, Gun-suk punched Jong, who lost his breath from the hit. Haeyeon screamed after seeing the blow land on Jong. He flew backward and was only stopped by a pillar nearby. Kneeling on the ground, Jong said it was very hard to breathe. Gun-suk asked Jong if he liked that. Struggling to lift his head and breathe, he looked at Gun-suk, who was preparing another attack. Suddenly, only smoke could be seen where Gun-suk stood. He had been hit from behind. Jong looked without understanding what had saved him. It was Haeyeon, who had used all the power she could to help him. Gun-suk's friends complained as they watched what had happened. The 2 went towards her to take her down. But at that moment, numbers 1 and 2 arrived and took care of the opponents. The girl didn't even understand what had just happened, as she looked at the clone, who had a strange look in his eyes. Looking back, Gun-suk couldn't believe what was happening, calling Jong's attention. He said he could finally breathe. Gun-suk cursed at him and charged toward him. He was already out of sight. Jong jumped and prepared to attack. He thanked Gun-suk for serving as a practice dummy. In the air, he kicked Gun-suk squarely in the face. Sitting on the ground to rest, he was panting with exhaustion. On the ground, Gun-suk lay sprawled, already missing some teeth. Next to him were his friends, all knocked down on the ground as well. His status window appeared. Happy, he was looking at the system panel, but suddenly he fainted. His clones and Haeyeon ran toward him. Later at night, he woke up. He was walking with Heian and asked her why she didn't run while she had the chance. He thought she wanted to talk about her power. She said she was really surprised. She couldn't believe that the famous rookie hunter was a clone. Jong asked her not to spread that information, and she asked if he didn't want to become famous. He explained that something like what happened could repeat, and she said she understood and that her lips were sealed. As they arrived, Jong asked if this was her house, and she replied that it was. He asked if her hand was okay and if she could hold a pen. She said it was her left hand, so it was fine. Heian said she was very hurt and asked if he could lessen the homework. He questioned her, asking if she hadn't already finished it. She complained, saying he only had a good memory at times like this. Jong thanked Heian, which surprised her. He said that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have one. However, she was bragging about her accomplishments. She asked if it wouldn't be better to thank her over some barbecue, and he replied that he would buy it for her later. She said that was a promise. She mentioned she was going inside while waving goodbye. He said he would make sure she ate plenty of meat. He was walking, and his clones were trying not to make any noise, until he noticed his clones behind him. He said they were clones, not shadows, and told them to go work. The clones said all the training fields were closed. He bent down and picked up 2 sticks from the bushes, and said they could do it at the park. 1 month after those events, Mr. Junmo was on the phone with Jong. He asked if his plans were going well, to which Jong said it had been a great success. Jong continued, saying that now even he could hit a target with a pistol, and the ability had improved. Mr. Junmo congratulated Jong on his achievements, and added that with Clone 3, he could learn more things and faster. The status window was shown, clearly displaying the increase in all stats. Jong told Mr. Junmo that he would be surprised when he saw that status increase. He also asked if it would be possible to secure 3 rank E hunting fields for tomorrow. Even though he was surprised by the request, he replied that it wouldn't be a problem and that he would get the hunting fields, no matter what. As for the time he would need the hunting fields, Jong explained that the clones would exercise in the morning and hunt in the afternoon. Then, he hung up the call. Immediately, he put the clones to train their lower and upper bodies, as well as cardio. He ordered them to go to the park and make sure to return within 12 hours. It was also necessary to leave the weapons behind. Meanwhile, Jong researched monster dog hunting. Through the clones' training, he could see they had learned very well and could copy almost anything. So, what would happen if he started studying the characteristics of these monsters and how to hunt them correctly? Jong began researching various tips and tutorials on hunting. The clones returned home. They arrived exhausted from the exercises. He only realized the time when the clones got home. Seeing them tired, Jong still thought they were full of energy and told them to go eat. Jong had watched many rank F hunting guides and expected his clones to be able to hunt based on that. He wanted to try hunting to get used to battle, using the familiar ability, and learning about mana during his breaks. While he was thinking, Mr. Junmo messaged that he would arrive in 10 minutes. So, he hurried the clones to eat faster and get ready. The clones got ready in time. Mr. Junmo commented on how intimidating the clones looked. Jong asked if the 3 hunting fields were ready, and he replied yes, and that the hunting fields were nearby. Saying goodbye, Jong asked Mr. Junmo to take care of the clones for him. He asked why Jong wasn't going along. Jong said he would participate remotely using the familiar ability, and that he had to learn the mana breathing technique. Mr. Junmo left with the clones. Jong prepared to do his part. He uses a tutorial to practice, following the steps to develop his mana breathing technique, trying his best to focus. He uses the sensation he felt when using his familiar and cloning abilities as a foundation. Using that feeling as a base and maintaining concentration, he seems to sense something. Gradually, he feels the mana circulate through his body. The sensation spreads more and more, infusing itself within him, until he can clearly feel it. The meditation, mana recovery, mana increase, the effect of mana breathing, and the reduction of mental fatigue. In one of the rank F hunting fields, a hunter is crawling, trying to escape from an abnormal monster. The monster was obviously far too strong to be in a rank F dungeon. In addition to hunters, the monster also attacks weaker monsters. It needed to be reported to the authorities. However, the large mutant fish wasn't willing to let the man escape so easily. Exasperated, the hunter continues to slowly try to flee. He is terrified to see the monster right behind him, and only cries in the face of the inevitable end awaiting him. His final scream echoes through the dungeon. A car stops in front of a hunting field. It was Mr. Junmo at the last hunting field, the sewage treatment station. This was the field for hunting alien fish, famous for their strong jaws. He says goodbye to Clone 3, asking him to be careful. Mr. Junmo sends a message, letting Jong know that he had already left each clone in a hunting field. Then, he reflects to himself that a skill that allows hunting in 3 different places is truly incredible. He says to himself that, depending on the outcome of that hunt, the hunter industries would start to make noise. At Jong's house, he was excited and feeling like a genius for acquiring the mana breathing technique. The tutorial said to stay focused and keep breathing, and be careful not to confuse the breathing technique. Then he realizes he got it wrong, and that it's harder to master the mana breathing technique. He notices the message that the clones are already in their respective hunting fields and prepares to participate remotely. He focuses, letting the mana flow, and activates the familiar skill. His senses connect to Clone 1. Jong is startled by the vision, until he realizes it's just Clone 1 hunting a monster. Feeling how easily Clone 1 hunts, Jong wonders if the hunting guides really help. He sees a a horde of monster rats approaching. This was the perfect chance to test if his theory was correct. He remembered the tutorial video he watched about giant rats, describing how they are one of the most annoying monsters among rank F. In the video, the experienced hunter says that if someone plans to hunt the rats, it's highly recommended to form a group. But if there's no other option but to go alone, there are other ways to hunt efficiently. First, they move in a straight line, so just keeping distance and shooting is the best choice. Following this tip, Clone 1 pulls out his pistol. Without hesitation, he hits the monsters with shots. The tutorial hunter continues, saying that when it's not possible to take them all down from a distance and a fight is necessary, avoid attacking the head. The rat's skulls are too hard. The ideal target is the spine, a step that Clone 1 performs with ease, easily taking one down. But of course, they always come in large hordes, as they reproduce just as much and as quickly as common rats. Concluding the tutorial, the hunter in the video says that for those who study, giant rats are just experience points. In the background of the video, another hunter points out that aiming while the monsters are moving wouldn't be easy. But Clone 1 has accuracy far beyond human capability, shooting without fear of missing, hitting the rat's spines precisely. As expected, the clones could only hunt if he used his techniques. However, they didn't feel surprised or scared. They were also hunting without considering the level of the opponents. They just wandered around and signaled the hunt. Now that I've experienced hunting using the familiar skill. In this sense, his status window was always up to date. Thus, his clones were possibly getting stronger. His goal for that day was to exhaust that field of rank F monsters. Meanwhile, other hunters entering the area encountered a very calm place. Having found several horned rabbits in abundance, they wondered how much they were all worth. Meanwhile, Zhang's group of hunters couldn't figure out why they had the feeling they were forgetting something. But suddenly, they remembered what they had forgotten. They hadn't collected any of the horned rabbits they had hunted. He asked clones 1, 2, and 3 to return and collect all the horned rabbits they had hunted up to that point. He ordered them to stop hunting and put all the game in boxes. However, he considered that someone might have already taken the head. He noticed that number 3, despite seeing the alien fish, didn't catch them. When asked why, number 3 simply said he hadn't hunted them. Zhang said that each one of them could make some money, and it wasn't the time to be so honest. He also realized that number 3 hadn't hunted it, but who would cut like that? One of the clones had a doubt, thinking it wasn't an alien fish, but still thought it should be taken. However, the original identified it as someone's upper limb. One of the clones noticed that something was different there. Alert, he positioned himself. After hearing a noise, he saw a part of the alien fish being thrown. That's when he realized that the huge fish was throwing small fish as bait to attract other fishermen. Before he could even think of something, he was hit by that alien creature. In that attack, it tore off his right upper limb. Immediately afterward, he began to feel pain. At that moment, the original also felt as if he had suffered the same fate as the clone. He was still trying to understand what had happened. What was that intense pain he felt in his right arm? However, when he looked at his arm, it was intact, but the pain he felt was unbearable. So much so that he curled up in a corner. He realized that the connection had been unintentionally cut due to the intense pain he felt. But it wasn't the time for that. Right after, he contacted Agent Junmo and wanted to know which hunting field number 3 was in. It was reported that he was at the sewage treatment plant in Incheon. Zhang asked the agent to bring number 1 and number 2 to that location immediately. Since he was getting ready to go, he knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, number 3 was face to face with that big monster, and apparently, he was on the defensive. He hadn't gone through that kind of experience before, and the big monster, with the appearance of a fish, was right in front of him. Elsewhere not far away, Zhang had just arrived. He arrived in a taxi. He was standing in front of the city's sewage treatment plant. At first, he couldn't imagine that there was such a monster in such a peaceful place. But being disconnected from number 3 was causing him some anxiety. Looking at his status, he realized that there was still a long time before he could use the ability again. Upon arriving there, they asked him to show his identification bracelet. To his relief, the agent was already there, having arrived before him. With him were number 1 and number 2. The agent wanted to know what was going on, and Zhang quickly explained that it had to do with the disappearance of number 3. The agent was startled when he heard there was a monster there. The agent seemed to know what it was. He commented that they should alert the authorities and temporarily close the area because it was a fishman. He explained that it had the same D ranking, and even a group of class hunters wouldn't be enough to hunt that monster. The young man also focused on preventing other hunters from entering, but they only did that after his clones had entered the portal. He was worried about clone number 3 and couldn't just sit and wait. He asked the agent to trust him this time. Just as he trusted his clones, he activated the familiar ability. That way, he could give direct instructions to number 1 and number 2, who were heading to find clone number 3. The first order he gave was to go to the place where number 3 had disappeared. Clones 1 and 2 were heading in that direction. One of them signaled for them to stay calm and wait for any movement. From a distance, they saw a creature they couldn't quite identify. They communicated that they had found the fishman that had been previously reported. They didn't expect to be so lucky. Now they could strike first. The stats were at the level of an E-class hunter, but the clones only received 53% of the stats. But they wouldn't be in a normal state if they considered the clones' abilities. It could be possible. They were instructed to aim for the head. They wanted to immediately take down the big monster. Even though they aimed and shot at the head, no damage was done, and both clones were left confused. Zhang also didn't understand why the bullets weren't working. Now they had the opposite effect and were waiting for another reaction. The fishman was leaping toward the clones and preparing to attack. They dodged, each to one side, and the fish fell between them. They only saw the monster jumping, even though they attacked all at once. Frightened, Zhang realized they only made a scratch. The monster attacked them again, but it hit beside the clone. Zhang praised the clones and said it would be difficult to swing the sword in the tight forest. With the sword stuck in the tree, the fishman applied more force and simply cut through 2 trees with a single swing. Zhang, shocked, said to forget what he had just said. The trees fell to the ground. The fishman looked back, searching for the clones. The clones, taking advantage of the monster's distraction, attacked. They hit his arm, but it had no effect. Zhang said it wasn't working, while the clones threw themselves at the monster, ready to attack. The monster, sensing their approach, prepared a punch. He hit one of the clones, sending it flying, and Zhang wondered how they would hunt him with such ineffective attacks, until he remembered something. He said that a bullet ricocheted off another and caused some damage. He suggested that if they aimed at the same spot, the clone fired and hit the same place, causing damage. Excited, Zhang said it worked. He praised the clones and told them to fill him with bullets. The monster didn't like this and tried to attack. He attempted again and again while being shot. He defended himself and prepared. He grabbed his sword, and suddenly it caught fire. Furious, he prepared to attack. He swung his sword toward the clone. The clone defended just in time, but it wasn't enough, and he was sent flying. Zhang said that suddenly the monster had gotten stronger. He tried to attack the other clone as well. Zhang tried to figure out why the sword had become flaming. He guessed the monster was severely injured and had temporarily developed to protect itself. The clone attacked the monster, but soon received a blow from the sword. The monster tried to finish the job with his sword, but thinking quickly, the clone grabbed the monster's hand and prepared to attack, aiming at the monster as a last resort. He attacked every place he could, but the monster didn't like that and prepared to strike with his other hand. The clone defended, but wasn't unscathed. He separated from the monster and advanced to attack again. The monster noticed and advanced as well. He tried to attack the clone with his foot. The fishman's kick landed squarely. The clone crouched and tried to endure the pain. The fishman, giving no respite, attacked again, but the clone that had been thrown earlier returned and saved him. The two advanced again to attack the monster. The monster noticed and prepared to strike, but they managed to attack without being hit. The monster, already out of strength, glared at them angrily, but he couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground, defeated. Zhang said it was over. The clones lay on the ground to rest. Zhang said they were out of bullets and that it was enough for today. He mentioned he should inform Agent Junmo, but as he turned, the clone saw footprints. However, the clone was alarmed. Zhang said the monster wasn't dead and asked number 2 to follow the tracks. The monster was heading toward the portal. At the entrance to the hunting field, a guard was blocking hunters from entering and explaining that there was a rank D monster in the field. The guard said the association's hunters would soon be sent and that he would provide updates as soon as there were any. Meanwhile, Junmo thought Zhang should arrive faster. Suddenly, the guard called for everyone to gather their forces and inform the chief. The monster, still alive, was running toward the entrance, already preparing to attack whoever was in front. The guards tried to stop the monster from reaching the portal, but it was ineffective. Finally, the monster reached the portal. Suddenly, number 1 emerged from a bush and threw a dagger at the monster, but the dagger only ricocheted. Then the young man appeared and caught the dagger in midair, preparing to use all his strength. Seeing the need to end this problem, he launched himself at the fishman, intending to exterminate him before he could harm anyone else. However, everyone was surprised. He showed incredible agility in that desperate moment. Even one of his clansmen was surprised. Someone announced that they had arrived at the scene. He said he would report the details after the investigation. Despite seeing the creature on the ground, he didn't know exactly what to report. He approached to see what kind of creature it was. He couldn't believe it was a fishman. One of the guards asked if he was from the association. After confirmation, the guard wanted to know what was happening. The guard reported that a hunter who had been inside the portal before it was blocked was hunting that rank D monster. However, this was a rank F field, which meant a rank D team should have been there. But the guard reported that it was a hunter, not a rank D hunter team. This left the man a bit more shocked. He was also investigating more deeply. From what they knew, it was a Class F hunter along with his clones who had taken down the monster. This made him think, how could a hunter with Class F clones manage to defeat a Class D monster? He also realized that all the attacks had been focused on one spot, likely because they didn't have special weapons. He didn't know it was possible to shoot a moving monster with such precision. At that moment, he glanced at the boy who was talking to his agent. While the guard was still speaking to him, he simply ordered him to finish the investigation. With that Class D monster on the ground, he didn't know how he would write his report. What should he say to the association? If he claimed he killed the Class D monster alone, they might not believe him. Meanwhile, his skills and other stats kept increasing. Zhang was satisfied, unlocking several abilities at once. But he thought that number 1 and 2 had survived thanks to regeneration. The agent asked how the clones were doing, since despite being injured, they still had some recovery time. He was now receiving praise from the agent for being a hunter and for managing to take down a Class D monster. He said he wasn't joking. He really believed he could hunt a Class D monster on his own without any issues. It was at that moment he remembered the short sword. The one the monster had was a unique sword. He mentioned that the monster had changed after its eyes turned red. It became something else entirely. However, the agent didn't think it was safe for him to get his hands on the sword first. as it could be a cursed item. Jong wasn't too happy about that, since if it were cursed, he wouldn't be able to use it. What made him feel better was when the agent said it could be worth a lot, as it was a cursed item. Given that, he concluded that it would be better to let the clone handle it first. Then he remembered he had another item and asked if the thing that fell from the fishman's head was rare as well. He showed something that looked a lot like a red stone. Mr. Junmo, upon seeing it, realized it was a low-level gem, a completely worthless item. However, he found it hard to tell the truth. Even seeing the young man's expectant look, he had to say that the item was cheap. This caused some disappointment, as Jong had expected to get a lot of money for that item. To lift his spirits, Junmo said the other items could be worth a lot, so he shouldn't feel too down. That made him feel a bit better, and he asked the agent to take care of the rest of the collection. Back at home, he was tired. Many things had happened that day, but first, he wanted to summon number 3 again. He focused a bit to make it happen. He summoned number 3 again. He handed him the equipment and asked him to exercise. Right after, he took off his clothes, which were dirty from the hunt. Now calmer and freshly showered, he could check out that sword. Looking at it in the box, he realized it was a very beautiful short sword. He felt proud, as it was an item he had acquired himself. When he observed the stone, he realized it was a strength gem. In his research, he found that the strength gem was low level, a crystal with a strength attribute. But it had a complicated side effect that could end up turning him into a monster. Usually, the clone's injuries and other things didn't affect him. But he was wary, as it could transform him into a monster instead of the clones. He even thought about the agent's reaction if he saw him turned into a monster. He thought people might not recognize him and try to hunt him like prey. So, he decided not to use that artifact for now. The next thing to check was that sword, but he remembered that Mr. Junmo had said not to touch it directly. That's why it had been placed in a box as a precaution, so there was no problem bringing it there. He asked number 2 to take the sword from the box. He noticed that when number 2 picked it up, he seemed a bit strange. This gave Jong a brief scare. Number 2 said he could hear a voice coming from it. Since Jong couldn't hear it, he decided to activate the familiar ability. When he did, there was an unsettling noise saying several different things at once. He decided to deactivate the familiar ability for now. Apparently, the noise didn't affect the clone, except for being really loud. Jong decided he would use that sword for now. 2 status windows showed that regeneration was increasing. Looking at numbers 1 and 2, he realized that resting was helping their recovery. However, he still had to take them hunting the next day, but they were still in that condition. He informed the 2 that, for now, the 3 of them would meditate and unlock mana breathing. Right after, he activated the meditation function. The next day, he had to go to college. He was surprised by the fact that the semester passed as if in the blink of an eye. He was so busy increasing his stats that he didn't notice time passing. Anyway, he was already back to class, and he was at college. He didn't know it would be so lonely. No one was even pretending to know him. As he entered his class, he noticed beforehand. At least there was a familiar face there. It was the guy from the other day who went with him to the gym. He said he joined because he had information that a professor there was generous with grades. He asked if he was still doing his job regularly. Little by little, people started noticing it was Young Sangwon. He had changed so much that he was almost unrecognizable. The friend was saying that now he was popular with girls. Even he was surprised because he didn't know he had changed that much. The guy next to him thought he was joking and asked if he had already met his parents. He was planning to go home and stay for a while. When the friend invited him to go out later for a drink, he refused because he had plans. The friend thought he was a traitor. However, he had just made a promise and couldn't go out with him. Now, the friend was sure he was a traitor and thought he was just making an excuse to go out with some girl. Showing it to the other friends, he said there was no need to lie anymore, as they had also heard. At the World Hunters Association, among many rooms of all kinds, and offices full of researchers, one of the staff reports to his superior, saying that the oracle predicted a disaster. The superior, the association's president, Mr. Michael Harris, asks what the disaster would be. Without beating around the bush, the staff member says it's about the formation of a portal and an invasion of hundreds of monsters. Mr. Michael asks if the location and date of the invasion have been confirmed, to which the staff member explains that the only confirmation is that the strongest monsters would be rank A. It is estimated to happen in the coming days, and it is supposed to be in South Korea. Some guild leaders gather in a room. Most of them don't understand why such a big meeting was called. A guild leader arrives looking for the guild leader, Mr. Wante. She arrives bumping into him. Mr. Wante is winded for a moment, but he still greets Miss Miho. She is the master of the Yellow Guild, Han Miho, who comments that something big must be about to happen. Mr. Wante, master of the Keenest Guild, Park Wante, thought the same as Miss Miho. They chat a bit on their way to the meeting room. Inside the meeting room, there are many other guild masters. One of the men looks at Mr. Wante with some disdain. The number 1 guild master in Korea, Mr. Shin Haesong, leader of the Haesong Guild. Miss Miho and Mr. Wante feel apprehensive when they see him there. In all his arrogance, Mr. Shin keeps provoking Mr. Wante. Trying to ignore his comments, Mr. Wante just tries to end the conversation. Without expecting Mr. Shin to mention the most sensitive topic of the Keenest Guild, the subject of the Odin Tower. Mocking, Mr. Shin mentions that he heard Team 1 of the Keenest Guild had been sent there recently. And he continues, saying he hasn't heard anything in the last few days. And in a very mocking way, he says he's curious to know. The number 2 guild master in Korea, Mr. Kim Il-gim, tries to silence Mr. Shin and his taunts. But without caring, Mr. Shin continues, adding that he didn't hear anything interesting, except that the results weren't good enough. Mr. Wante was clearly falling for the provocations. The tension in the room was evident. It seemed like Mr. Wante wouldn't be able to control himself. Then the door opens. Through it, the leader of the Korean Hunters Association, Mr. Oh Byung-han, enters. Noticing the strange atmosphere, he asks what's going on there. Mr. Wante was still very irritated, but he calms down and returns to his seat. The other guild masters also calm down. The association leader is left puzzled. He starts the meeting by thanking the guild masters for being there. He proceeds to say that Korea had recently received a disaster alert from the World Hunters Association. Mr. Shin wonders if it would be the Oracle. The association president says they received information that a portal would open and a massive wave of monsters would invade. Since the monsters could be rank A, the cooperation of all the guilds in the country was necessary. The guild masters asked when and where it would happen. They wanted the entire country to be covered while they waited for the portal. That was the reason they were there, to hold that meeting about the matter. The only thing they knew was that it would happen. They were worried because there weren't enough hunters to finish the work right there. However, this was also being considered. The leader Park Wante had a proposal to make. They decided they would listen to what he had to say. He said that when the disaster occurred, all the guilds would gather in that location and focus their manpower there. This would be without exception, and the guilds that didn't cooperate would be severely punished. The one who called the meeting found this to be a reasonable opinion, and those who agreed were asked to raise their hands. One by one, they raised their hands, agreeing with the decision. Oh Byung-hun announced that the meeting was concluded. They would follow the opinion of leader Park Wante. Elsewhere, the young hunter was happy because he had finished his first day back to school quickly. In front of him, he saw the girl who was his student and another guy talking to her. The scene showed that the guy was really insisting on getting her phone number. However, she had said she had a boyfriend, but even so, he kept insisting. Jong approached him and asked what she was doing. Calling him love, she asked him if he was already there. He immediately found her reaction strange because he didn't like being called by that term at all. Holding his arm, she said she had been waiting and now they could leave. On the way, he asked if the guy had been pressuring her to give her number, and that's why she left so quickly. She explained that she had been telling him she had a boyfriend just as he arrived, but in any case, she didn't have one. She mentioned it was their school's anniversary. She said she had noticed he couldn't take his eyes off her casual clothes. At that moment, the phone in his pocket started ringing. He looked and saw a message saying that all fees had been debited and the balance payment had been deposited. He was quite satisfied because he had earned 50 million. His clones were the best. He was so pleased that he invited the girl to go eat some expensive meat. They went somewhere to eat beef because they wanted something like Korean beef. She found everything really delicious. She knew it was all very expensive and asked if he was sure about it. He told her she could eat because he was just apologizing. At that moment, she looked at his wrist. The guy was excited and ordered more meat, this time portions enough for 4 people. At that moment, alerts were triggered for everyone. They were all looking at their phones for more information. It was also on TV. They announced it wasn't a drill. It was an emergency disaster alert. From that moment on, a disaster alert was issued across the country. Everyone in the restaurant became very worried. They told citizens all over the country to check the locations of evacuation facilities. Jaeung-do thought it was unfair that they were hanging out with friends while the traitor was on a date with a woman. One of the friends wasn't sure if he was really on a date. However, shortly after, he caught sight of the two having fun and eating Korean beef. From a distance, they could see 2 people talking and enjoying themselves. After that scene, the friend who had tried to defend him felt betrayed. But then his phone rang, not just his, but everyone's in that place. Even so, the friend who felt betrayed didn't look at the messages on his phone. Jaeung-do realized that the bad messages indicated something was happening in the country. He noticed that the internet was going crazy, but nothing had been said at the college about there being no class the next day. Jong soon noticed the presence of his friends. He wondered what they could be doing in that place. The friends, feeling betrayed, wanted to know who the girl with him was. He explained that it wasn't like that. She was just his student. After that brief explanation, he introduced his friends to the student. Jong asked for the meal to be packed up, as they hadn't eaten everything there, and he gave it to her to eat with her parents. He also asked his friends not to go anywhere except home. Hee-yeon asked if there wasn't anything else to do that day. Her companion said that her parents might be worried if she wandered around with a disaster alert in place. All the friends thought he was a grumpy old man, always nagging everyone. This made him even more frustrated, and he shouted for everyone to go home and stop worrying their parents. That situation was making him uncomfortable because his friends weren't taking the warning seriously. He looked around and noticed that everyone was living their lives as if nothing was happening. Everyone was satisfied, laughing, and happy. It seemed like they would move on to another place to continue the fun. It might have been an exaggeration because he was being overly sensitive. Everyone was acting so normally. He picked up his phone to check a few things and also make a call. He called his agent and asked if he knew about the disaster warning. He asked if there was anything more specific he could know about the disaster. All he knew was that they wanted to stay at that place for 3 months because they didn't know when or where the portal would open. That information made Jong angry. If it was so dangerous, couldn't the association provide more information and strongly suggest people be more cautious? However, the agent said the real problem was the duration of the 3 months, which would cause a massive economic impact. The information was lacking so that they could say they had warned people and wouldn't have to bear the financial burden. Mr. Junmo was heading to the shelter at that moment. The hunting grounds were supposed to be all blocked. Arriving where the clones were, he he was concerned about how numbers 1 and 2 were doing. The two were feeling a bit better. His expression became a little sad when he saw that his clones weren't fully well. Looking at their statuses, he realized he couldn't summon number 3 at that moment. In this situation, he decided to summon number 1 again. After the new summoning, number 1 returned. He was asked to wear a cap so he wouldn't be confused with the clones. After a while, the 4 were gathered again. He called them to go back home. Arriving at his mother's house with food, she, standing at the door, couldn't identify who that young man was. He realized that not even his mother could recognize him after losing so much weight. His mother was unsure if it was really Sangwon. Feeling a bit awkward, he told his mother it was indeed him. She was shocked because he had lost so much weight and thought he was starving. His father also didn't seem to recognize him. His sister quickly came to the door to see if he had changed that much. Angry at him, she said he should have looked for his cute sister as soon as he returned home. She asked why he was standing like that. Then she took a closer look. She was also surprised, just as their parents had been earlier. It was at that moment he remembered his friend's words, that when he returned home, not even his family would recognize him. His mother was concerned because his friends were wearing masks, but he explained that they weren't his friends. He then asked everyone to take off their masks. This caused a shock to his mother, father, and sister, because they were all exactly like the original. After an explanation, they realized they were clones due to his ability. His mother had heard that most young people practice, but she didn't know he practiced these abilities. He told her he was working as a hunter as well. His mother didn't like that at all because it was very dangerous. She said that with his ability, there was no reason to put himself in danger. She also mentioned that there was a disaster warning and that they would have to go to the shelter. His father said he was packing things, but just as a precaution, he asked to closely monitor the situation. He also said he had to work the next day, so they couldn't just pack up and leave the house so suddenly. He looked at them and thought they didn't realize how serious the situation was. He thought he could at least warn them about the monster invasion. He said he would stay there at least for that day because he had received a message saying that classes had been suspended. He knew that wouldn't convince them to leave, so he figured he should at least stay there. He called them for dinner. His sister asked what it was. Looking at the packaging, she realized it was Korean beef and thought it was amazing. Looking at his parents, he thought he should have visited them sooner. He said the clones should eat too. However, he thought Korean beef was too good for them, so he gave them only rice. The 3 clones were gathered around a large bowl of rice. Once the table was set, he said that everyone must be very hungry, and they could now eat. His sister noticed that now there were 4 of them eating. He asked what would happen if he got fat again. His mother was very happy because it had been a long time since they had a meal with the whole family. He paused for a moment and admired his parents and sister. All that family fun didn't last long. Before he realized it, he was lying on the floor with some injuries. Standing up, trying to regain consciousness, he was attempting to understand what had happened. Looking back, he was perplexed by what he saw. His parents' house, along with the surroundings, had been hit by something. Looking up, the sky was covered with creatures and beings from another dimension. From the portal, A and B class monsters the size of buildings had emerged, beings that were devastating the city. With powers difficult to control by the few hunters available, the city wouldn't last much longer. Jong was shocked by what he saw. Looking back, he called out for his family. They were all on the ground, lying under the debris. Looking at the equipment on the ground, he realized that number 1 had protected them from the explosion with his body. Looking to the side, he noticed some movement. It was his clones, which had also resisted the explosion. The clones had also suffered damage. Jong was thinking that number 1 had disappeared and number 3 was injured. He noticed his mother getting up and called her. Looking back, she asked if he was hurt, and he replied that he was fine. His father, in shock, lamented for the house. Jong said that the house didn't matter at that moment, and told him that the portal had opened. In the completely desolate city after the portal opened, monsters were running everywhere, capturing and hunting people. Some were simply buried. Others weren't as lucky and were captured by the monsters. The open portal was constantly generating monsters, as if they had no end. They packed all the supplies they had into a backpack. Jong asked if his sister had managed to get dressed. She replied yes, but it was a bit big. He said it was because number 1 had worn that. She asked if the clone was okay, and he replied yes, telling her not to worry. Suddenly, something was thrown towards Jong. It hit the ground of the house and caused a small explosion. It was a monster that had fallen from the sky. Jong thought that the monster had fallen from the sky, until another one fell, and he realized that the portal had opened in the sky, and the monsters that couldn't fly were falling. He said they were lucky in that regard. They tried to open the door, but without success. Jong's sister said the door wouldn't open and asked for his help. The father said the door must be broken and wouldn't budge. Jong took a baton from his father's hand and asked him to wait. Getting ready, he activated the strike ability, focusing entirely on the door. He attacked with great force. The door lock didn't withstand Jong's strike. To finish, he gave it a kick that sent the door flying. After opening the door, he told them to go. Images hard to forget. Looking around, he was scared. The city and cars were all full of monsters. He asked his father how far the nearest shelter was, and he replied it was 2 kilometers away. On the way, slimes could be seen. Skeletons reassembled themselves after the fall, and golems were rebuilding. He complained to himself that there were still many monsters unaffected by the fall, and wondered if they could make it through this situation. His sister suggested they use the underground tunnels, and he, shocked, asked if they had those at home. Snapping back to reality, he told everyone to head there, until he heard someone calling for help. The person had been buried and was asking if anyone could help. He was under many bricks and even an unconscious monster. The monster, however, had just woken up and stood up using the rubble for support. The trapped man, seeing the monster, screamed in fear. It was a D-rank troll. Seeing this, the man cried out for help again. Zhang's father was worried about what his son would do and was already thinking of how to stop him. He said Zhang needed to think rationally, and in the current situation, they couldn't save everyone, and urged them to head for the tunnels. Zhang thought that number 3 couldn't fight properly, and that only number 2 wouldn't be enough. The trapped man kept calling out for someone to hear him. Zhang thought he wasn't a clone, and that if he were defeated, it would be final. He couldn't simply leave without at least trying to help. His family asked what he was doing. The trapped man called out for his mother. Zhang had to at least try. He told them that when they got down there, they should close the door and wait for him. He asked number 2 to follow him and told number 3 to protect the family until the end. His sister asked if he was crazy. His father asked if he was really going, and he replied that he was a hunter and had to do this. He and number 2 went out to help the trapped man, and his sister shouted for him to come back. He thought about these situations where monsters rain down. There is only one thing hunters must do. Without hesitation, Zhang attacks the troll. The attack seems to have affected the creature. He wants to prove himself as a hunter by protecting that man from the giant monster. Zhang orders Clone 2 to take the man to a safe place, reaffirming that he is a hunter and that this was his duty. Clone 2 starts removing the debris from on top of the man, until he finally pulls him out. Zhang asks if the man can walk, receiving a positive response. Irritated by Zhang's actions, the troll roars fiercely. The protagonist is annoyed at having to deal with such a large monster. He orders Clone 2 to grab the weapon, preparing to use everything he can at that moment. Zhang knows this is not the time to be picky. He hands one of the crystals to Clone 2 and tells him to eat it. Without hesitation, the clone eats. The effects begin to manifest quickly, starting the transformation caused by the crystal. He writhes slightly during the process, and finally, his monstrous transformation is completed. Zhang checks with the clone if he is still his familiar, and the clone confirms he is still fully loyal. The troll is confused by this situation. The effects of Clone 2's transformation boost Zhang's stats without causing any side effects. He and his clone face the troll, ready to resume the fight. The troll starts advancing, with its massive club wreaking havoc on the ground. Then, it launches a direct attack. Zhang manages to dodge the attack well, and defends himself, even with that lousy staff. The creature tries to grab him, but the clone goes to the side and hits the troll's arm. The clone, with the transformation and that sword, had become much stronger. Zhang can only admire how incredible that weapon was. Roaring in pain, the troll becomes even more enraged by the heavy damage. It starts attacking repeatedly with greater ferocity. He easily dodges the attacks, even though the troll is fast. It was slower than the fishman he defeated in the dungeon. He charges at the troll, attacking with all his might, but the large monster manages to defend itself, ending up with only a wound on its hand. Zhang can't understand how the troll's arm, which had been severely damaged by the clone, had already regenerated. He takes a hit but defends just in time. His body is thrown far away, still surprised by the troll's regeneration ability. The troll's flesh wasn't tough, so the monster was vulnerable to sword attacks, but its regeneration covered this weakness. Zhang realizes he can barely cause any damage to the opponent. That's when he asks number 2 to knock it down for a moment. Going on the offensive, all he had to do was bring down the monster in front of him. To do this, he struck its leg, seeking more success. After the attack, he manages to make the troll feel the impact. Even with its regeneration ability, he was sure the attack had somewhat affected its vision. Another attack was launched against the creature, which took damage to its leg. This made the monster even angrier. The troll tears up. Even though it had great regeneration, it was not resistant to pain. It stares directly at Zhang, while Zhang prepares to use the ability. Strike, leaning back, gathering strength for the blow. The strike is delivered to the troll. Using all his strength, Zhang hurls the monster far away. His stats are boosted after successfully defeating the troll. His hand was sore. That was the side effect of the strike ability. Zhang reflects on how the troll was as strong as the fishman, without relying on a good weapon. The protagonist decides to go after his sister to protect her. He thinks about calling her, but he lost his phone during the fight, so he asks for Clone 2's phone, which he hands over immediately. Zhang makes a comment about how Clone 2 might be kicked out of the shelter because of his transformed appearance. They hear a strange sound. It was a horde of monsters chasing some surviving citizens. Zhang frowns. The city had been destroyed by the invasion. Airplanes flew over the ruined city. Observing from above that apocalyptic scene, colossal monsters were trampling houses and buildings, like a massive draconic monster, about to cause more destruction with a powerful fire beam. When it was intercepted by magic that hit it, a fire mage initiated the attack. They were members of the Red Fire Guild, ranked 9 in Korea. But it wasn't just them. The members of the Scorpion Guild, ranked 7 in Korea, also arrived. The draconic monster roared powerfully. The hunters launched themselves at the enraged creature. Several attacks occurred throughout the city. Planes with hunters were circling the sky. They reached their destination and prepared to open the hatch. The hatch was opened, and the hunters were getting ready to jump. Park Wonta and the members of the Keenest Guild were ready to take action. A flying monster was approaching the aircraft, but the defense weapons were activated, and they eliminated the invading monster. Since many guilds were focusing, it would be a waste for them to join as well, and he said they should prioritize the evacuation of survivors. Below the aircraft, Many strong and weak monsters could be seen all over the city. There were also hunters prioritizing looting. Some were even robbing unconscious people. Seen from above, the commander was outraged at the hunters taking advantage of the situation. The pilot informed him that many survivors had been spotted 700 meters away and asked him to take a look. The commander said he understood while activating a power in his eyes. With the power in his eyes, he spotted a group of people in the distance. It was Jong and his clone protecting a family. The commander thought he was a hunter and that he was holding up well, but the number of enemies was too large for just 2 people. He told the pilot that he was heading north while putting on his equipment and told his team to group up and begin the rescue. He jumped from the aircraft and activated his flight gear. With his gear, he flew over the city toward his objective. Jong, while fighting, thought he just needed to get rid of the troll and head to the tunnels. More and more monsters were gathering around Jong. The family he was protecting was trembling with fear. Jong told them to go to the building's basement, but one family member said there were monsters behind them. Now knowing this, he asked number 2 to cover the rear while he tried to handle the front alone. A monster was about to attack one of the family members, but number 2 managed to strike it first. Jong was dealing with his monsters using his weapon. He thought that he could no longer use the strike ability because of the energy consumption. Suddenly, some debris began to move, and from it emerged a giant bird monster. Jong, dodging the bird's attack, complained about the monster's return. The bird used a strange power where it had attacked. The power began to glow brighter and spread. It looked like lava and almost hit Jong, but he defended himself. Some of it was about to fall on the defenseless family, but number 2 threw himself in front of them to protect them. He took all the damage from the attack. He was severely injured. Jong, unable to stand, leaned on his staff. Suddenly, a giant paw appeared above the bird monster. It crushed the bird monster. It was a giant tiger monster. Seeing the monster, Jong lost his strength. The weaker monsters also fled in fear of the tiger, and number 2 disappeared from too much damage. The tiger was already preparing to attack Jong, who was looking back in shock at number 2's disappearance. Sitting on the ground, out of strength, he just waited to see what would happen to him. Suddenly, a slash was made. Cowering, Jong was still waiting for the attack. He opened one eye to see what was happening, and he saw a hunter he didn't know in front of the tiger. The previous slash had an effect on the tiger and sliced it in 2. People were shocked by the hunter's strength. The hunter removed his mask and asked if Jong was okay. Jong, in shock, asked who he was. He replied that he was Park Wante of the Keenest Guild, in the building's underground. Among many people, a voice was heard shouting to be let out. The people seemed used to the shouting by now. It was Jaiwoo, who was telling number 3 to release her so she could go save her brother. Looking at him, she wondered why he was so strong. She asked him if a clone shouldn't want to save the original. He said he prioritized the master's orders. Her parents asked her to stop, saying the other people were getting scared. She asked her father if he wasn't worried, and he said he was, but that Jong would return. The father said that the clone was Jong's ability, and if he was fine, Jong was too. Seeing Jong break the door, he believed that indeed Jong was a hunter and asked her to have more faith in her brother. She was sad but understood. When she said she would believe in Jong, number 3 loosened his grip. Suddenly, a noise from the door was heard. Someone was asking for help. The father said there was someone outside, and Jaiwoo said it might be Jong, but the father said the voice was different. People said he was from another apartment, didn't know the password, and wondered if they should open the door for him. Looking through the security camera, they saw a man. The mother says it might be the man that Jong saved, and Jaiwoo says she will open the door. As she opened the door, she thought someone else was with him, and it must be Jong. The door slowly opened. Happily, he shouted, calling for Jong. You could see the man being lifted by the monster. From behind the man, a voice was asking for help. In shock, Jaiwoo couldn't even move. The monster was holding the man with its paw. It threw the man far away. It looked inside the shelter and started laughing. It was a Rankby monster, the screaming firefly. Looking to the side, it noticed something strange. When they realized the presence of a massive monster at the door, they all started running. Immediately, number 3 stood in front of the lady to defend her. She was paralyzed with fear when she saw the enormous creature. With him in front of the girl, he took the brunt of the impact. However, it wasn't enough to keep her completely unharmed. The moment was tense between number 3 and that giant insect. Despite being in deep inertia, he didn't notice when his abdomen was pierced. The parents' reaction was immediate, causing their daughter to react as well. She looked at her parents, thanks to number 3's quick reaction, who, by placing himself in front of the danger, managed to save her. Facing that being, an instant reaction was necessary. Thus, he shot at the door's electronic lock. The device, detecting the damage, initiated the emergency lock. At that moment, the monster tried to enter. However, number 3 forced his way out, throwing himself outside along with it. The monster resisted, but the clone, using his ability, managed to push it out, though he had to go with it. Elsewhere, the hunter Park Wante arrived just in time to save Jong. He was only thinking that he was sure that was the guy who organized the awakening program. He also introduced himself to the hunter, saying he was Jong Sang-woon and was thankful for being saved. However, the hunter was even more impressed with him for having saved so many lives and thought he had been incredible. He thought Jong was very brave for not running away, saying he could have if he wanted, but from the young man's perspective, he couldn't even if he wanted, with so many people there. Hunter Park thought it was easy to break a human's will in a dangerous situation, so that was truly an act of bravery. Jong, embarrassed, thought he had done really well. Park looked at the boy, searching for more answers. He was also remembering that when he was flying, he sensed the presence of a strange being. Fighting that being wasn't easy, as there were people to be saved, and Hunter Park wasn't sure what that thing was. It was simply something that dissipated into the air, leaving only its clothes, which, before disappearing, was fighting a beast many times larger than itself. What would be called new monsters. At that moment, he wondered what that person who had turned into Manhwa was. Turning back to the boy, who was getting up, he asked if he was a hunter, and he responded that he was, though not for long. Park wanted to know if he could ask a question about his ability. Looking at the hunter who had saved his life, Jong felt there was no need to hide something like that. He was about to explain his ability when he realized the connection with number 3 was cut. He entered another state, grabbed his sword, and rushed off. He only shouted that he had to go because his family was in great danger. Hunter Park shouted that he shouldn't go alone, as it would be too dangerous. His advice was heard, and Jong requested reinforcements, and for them to track his location and send the survivors back. After that, he waited for Team Bravo to pick him up. Jong hurried home, knowing the portal wasn't fully closed yet. Although he was very worried about his family, he couldn't stop hearing all those voices coming from the sword. He activated his dash ability, gaining more momentum to arrive before the worst could happen. However, somehow, the sword was modifying his body and behavior. Somewhere else, another hunter was using the fireball ability. When he unleashed the ability and hit his target, the area was engulfed in flames. All that power wasn't enough to burn in a single spot. Everything there had been around for a long time. It was requested that support teams be spread out, as his attack was too widespread. The teams didn't seem sufficient for the number of monsters that kept appearing. Moreover, their skin was too thick for any of the poison attacks to have any effect. The whole situation was worse than the hunters had anticipated. At every moment, new difficulties arose in facing monsters with completely different abilities. A presence was noticed and soon questioned. They wanted to know why Shin Haesung was there. He replied that he had only heard there was a lot of money around, and they never understood that. He was warning the supreme monster that was causing a lot of confusion. He needed to show his absolute power. When you have such power, teamwork is unnecessary. Meanwhile, at Jaiwa's family home, her father was frantic upon seeing his daughter with an injury. The mother cried as she grabbed bandages for a dressing. The father noticed something approaching from outside. It was the same monster that had injured his daughter, now banging on the door again. The people in the area had difficulty controlling their nerves. However, the young woman lying on the ground with some injuries begged everyone to hurry. The monster was getting closer to the people. The young woman's parents couldn't think of leaving her behind, but they were both worried about their daughter's vitality. At that moment, the young man with cloning abilities arrived with a sword, and he was out of control. He and the monster stared at each other for a moment. The father noticed that his son had changed slightly, because he saw his son with a sword in hand and a not-so-friendly expression. This also frightened the people present. However, all he could see was his sister on the ground and his parents supporting her. He also saw the monster that had caused all that pain to his family. His sister lying on the ground injured and crying in sadness, along with their parents. It all seemed too much for the young man to bear. He briefly let rage take over his body. Now, he was possessed by the aura of the sword. The monster sensed that his intent was to attack, and they both struck at the same time. Both were somehow injured. Despite being wounded, the rage was so great that he couldn't even feel the damage from the injury. The monster was speaking to him using his sister's voice. Jong, still holding the sword, grew more tense by the moment. Now he could feel the effects of the damage that monster had inflicted in the previous attack. However, the sword's thirst was greater than the pain he was feeling. He and the monster charged at each other at the same time. When he was about to be hit by the monster's attack, someone jumped in front of him and pulled him away from the monster. Hunter Park and another huntress arrived at that moment to defend the family. The presence of that hunter caused the monster to retreat a bit. The girl who had jumped in front of the young hunter to defend him was satisfied, as she had made a good move. Meanwhile, Hunter Park dealt with the monster. The blow the monster received was so strong that it sent it flying far away. In the meantime, the huntress was checking the young hunter's injuries. He was still under the effect of the sword's reaction when the huntress realized it was berserk. She activated her mental transfer ability and asked him to rest for a while. It was necessary to use that ability to control the hallucination state he was in. Despite her efforts, there didn't seem to be any positive reactions. When she was asked about the boy's condition, she honestly said it would be better to eliminate the monster as quickly as possible. Even in that state, the young hunter still wanted to speak. She asked him to stop trying to communicate, as his wounds could reopen. Even so, he managed to say that his sister was injured. Placing his hand on his chest, it seemed the emotional pain was greater than the physical one. Using what strength he had left, he begged them to please save his sister. Hearing those words, Hunter Park became fully energized. Looking at the monster, he said that neither he nor the young man's sister would die that day. At that moment, the monster realized that the hunter's energy and mana were becoming more intense. The hunter continued, saying that neither he nor the young man's sister would die that day. He asked the young hunter to rest a bit, as it would all be over soon. Oh Byung-hun was aware that an emergency evacuation would be necessary, as the situation was getting out of control. He was organizing the papers for the meeting, when someone called, saying they needed him. The number 1 guild master needed a consultation with that man, leaving him very irritated with that arrogance and lack of manners. Even so, the guild leader told the person with intimidating shoulders to stay out, as it was something important. The man asked him to stay calm, as the resolution to that problem would be quick. Shin Hae-sung asked if he intended to evacuate the people immediately, to which he responded affirmatively. He asked if he was going to tell them everything, and the man wanted to know where he was going with this. He explained his reasoning that in this situation, he would announce that there would be an invasion by an A-class monster. He also wanted to know if he could handle what was about to happen. He said that everyone would flood the association, and he wasn't sure if the man's head would still be on his shoulders next month, let alone in 3. Shin Hae-sung thought it wouldn't be good for his business, and also asked what he expected him to do. He said to hide the scale of the invasion, not mentioning that an A-class monster would be involved. In other words, he wanted them to blame themselves for not evacuating. He also said that, if it were him, he wouldn't have called a meeting or made an announcement about it. Oh Byung-hun got angry, as he didn't know how many people could die in the process. Shin Hae-sung pointed out that this was actually a good thing. In his reasoning, the more people were harmed, the more they would need hunters to intervene for them. Placing his hand on the man's shoulder, the leader of the number 1 guild said that he was misunderstanding, that this wasn't a request. The man closed his eyes and clenched his fists in distress. At that moment, the members of the Megalosaurus guild were attacking the monsters. This was still a time of peace, and the clones had the function of exercising. They just needed the clones to work hard and gradually increase their strength. He was certain that this was the best ability of all. They earned him money and worked out as well. He had just received a call from Mr. Junmo. He was satisfied because the young hunter had arrived there. He wanted the clone to go to the horned rabbit hunting ground that day too. Mr. Junmo wanted to know where number 2 was headed. He asked why the young man wasn't also training alongside them, as he would become much stronger much faster. However, the hunter thought it would be better to leave the hard work to the clones. He also explained that he wasn't serious when he said he would become a hunter. He earned enough just hunting the horned rabbits. He was fine taking care of himself, and that was enough. At that moment, the man asked if that was why everything had ended up the way it did. Suddenly, he was startled by something. When he looked at the agent in front of him, he no longer seemed the same. He also started being attacked by him. That's when he realized that everyone around him was different. They asked him if he had become a hunter, and why he eventually left and abandoned everyone. His sister was also there, in a different state, asking him to save her. He was looking around, trying to understand what it all meant. That's how he suddenly woke up in a place he didn't expect to be. Jong wakes up in a hospital bed. Mr. Wontae was there and asked if he had had a nightmare. He tells Jong not to move too much, so as not to reopen his wounds. He was in too much pain to speak. Mr. Wontae warns him to be careful, as his condition was bad, and he was lucky not to end up worse. Jong thanks Mr. Wontae for saving him, but Wontae just says they need to talk at another time. He adds that it wasn't the right time for that conversation yet. Jong's parents enter the room. Jong is surprised by this. They are worried about him. Jong's attending doctor says that, first of all, the surgery was a success. He estimates that Jong will be able to return to his normal routine in a month of recovery. Dazed, the protagonist asks what happened with the portal and how many days have passed since the monster invasion. His mother tells him it's been 4 days, and the major guilds took care of most of the strong monsters, but a few lower class ones remained. Jong says he doesn't remember anything before passing out. Then he realizes that he hasn't seen his sister around. He calls for her, somewhat desperately. Insistently, he asks where she is. Jong asks why no one is saying anything. Facing the room where Jaiwa is, the doctor says they treated the wound on her abdomen, but she had been infected by a man-absorbing virus. The doctor explains that most normal people are infected by monsters crossing the portal, decomposing the mana of the infected. He goes on to explain that this virus is usually harmless, but each person's mana has different characteristics. When this happens, the infected can no longer live normally. Jong is very shocked and asks if there's a cure. The doctor says no, because the mana of the infected and the virus become synchronized, and neither medicine nor healing magic would be enough. He says there is only a very slim chance if they could get help from an S-class healer or obtain extremely rare medicines. Jong already understood that extremely rare things would be immensely expensive. The doctor only confirmed it in a regretful tone. Without words, Jong just remained silent for a moment. A sudden regret crossed his mind. He regretted having helped people. This thought hammered in his mind. He should have prioritized his family instead of trying to help others. Remembering how his sister had asked him to go with the family to the shelter, the simple memory of her lying on the ground, injured, irritated him. He became furious and clenched his fists until his wounds reopened. The doctor asked Jong to stop. Many thoughts passed through his mind. The monsters he hadn't been able to kill. Jong's condition worsened as his wounds reopened. The doctor asked Jong to calm down, as the wounds were all open again. Jong could only blame himself for not having the ability to save everyone. He cried in sadness and frustration. He wished he had saved his entire family. He woke up in the afternoon, still feeling sad, apathetic, desolate, unresponsive, just quiet. Jong looked to the side and noticed someone approaching. It was Heian, who had come to visit him. She entered slowly, calling Jong Professor. Heian apologized for the sudden visit, but he thanked her for being there and asked how her family was. A little awkwardly, she said the house was damaged, but everyone made it to the shelter safely. Jong asked how she knew where he was, to which she replied that her father had contacted his father. He questioned why she was being so formal with him, and she blamed the seriousness of the situation they were in. Jong told her she could speak comfortably with him. Heian agreed and asked when he would be able to teach her again. The room fell silent for a moment. He called her as if he was about to be frank. Jong said he wanted to talk to her about that. Sincerely, he told her that he was going to quit college. 2 weeks later, still in the hospital, the doctors seemed incredulous. Jong had recovered completely in just 2 weeks, something exceptional even for a hunter. He was changing clothes to leave the hospital, dressing in his casual clothes. The wound caused by the insect monster had left a large scar on his shoulder. That scar was a painful reminder. He remembered the conversation he had with Hyun about his sister Jaewo's situation and that he could no longer be her tutor. This surprised the girl. Jong said he was very sorry about that. Hyun awkwardly responded that it was okay and thanked him for everything he had done for her. She turned to leave, visibly affected by the news, but she just brushed it off, saying it wasn't like they would cut off contact. She said he would regret quitting on a pretty student like her, and added that she would enter college. She paused for a brief moment. She also said she would get a boyfriend in college, and finished by telling him not to go back on his word when that happened. Back to reality, he didn't give much importance to that. He thought about how bad things were, and he figured that even if he wanted to, he wouldn't have time for more regrets. He finished getting ready, and left the hospital. Jong hailed a taxi. He was going to meet Mr. Wante. The taxi didn't stop. Jong stared at the place in front of him, the Keenest Guild office. He entered the building. The receptionist welcomed him and asked what he needed. Jong said he was there to meet the guild master, Mr. Wante, and the receptionist asked if he had an appointment. She began to dismiss him, but a man stopped her. The man asked him to wait. He asked Jong if he was Mr. Jong Sangwon, to which the protagonist obviously confirmed. The man said that Jong was a guest. He invited the protagonist to go upstairs, and told Jong that Captain Wante was waiting for him. From outside the room, someone called for Park Wante, and said that Jong had come to see him. Park Wante asked for him to be let in. Jong, entering the room, greeted him. Wante said he was happy that he got out of the hospital so quickly. Jong said it was thanks to him that he healed so fast, and mentioned that as soon as he got out of the hospital, he came to see him. Wante said he only did what was obvious. Jong said it wasn't obvious. He saved his family and sent them quickly to the hospital. Jong said he was extremely grateful. However, he was very curious as to why he did all this for them. He said he heard that in the hospital, he had provided them with private rooms. He even arranged a place for his parents, and the ICU for his sister. Clenching his fist, Wante prepared to say what he had to say. He says that he also has a sister, and she is missing along with her teammates. He mentioned that maybe he saw himself in Jong, and also said that he didn't do it to make Jong feel grateful, or feel obligated to do something for him. Jong asks why he asked to meet him as soon as he got better. Wante asks about the ability that he couldn't talk about earlier. He says that the clones are real and can do real things and asks if that's correct. Jong responds that it is. Clenching his fist, he celebrates mentally for being right. Getting straight to the point, Wante says he needs Jong's strength to rescue the first team of the Keenest Guild. He says he's not asking for this as a favor in return for the support he provided, but the only one who can save his sister and the rest of the first squad is Jong. Lowering his head, he said he was begging. Jong thought about what he had heard, and remembered when he asked him to take care of his sister. He said that since he had saved his family once, he would help. Wante asks if he accepted, and he says yes, and that he will do his best. Jong asks them to tell him what needs to be done to rescue them. They are in a training room. He asks what place this is. Wante replies that it's the training field of the Keenest Guild. The field is quite durable, so he can use all his abilities. He says they need to prepare to rescue them for 2 reasons. The first is that they have time. He explains that his sister has an ability that allows her to carry many resources for up to 8 more months. And the second reason is the level of the dungeon. The team was ranked S and couldn't return. He asks if Jong understands what that means, and he responds that it's too dangerous for him to proceed. Wante says that's exactly right, but there's a way to get around that. And he says that humans show incomparable strength when they are near the end. It's a momentary strength released during emergencies, enough to tear muscles and break bones, but of course, this is reflected in the stats. Wante says that until now, he's used battle sense, but that won't work on this mission, so he needs stats. He says he feels sorry for him, but it's the only way. He tells him to hold on as long as he can. At the JM agency, looking at the old messages he had with Jong, Junmo bites his nails nervously. He keeps biting them while looking at the phone, until he hears footsteps. Happy, he turns around and shouts for Jong, who was all injured. Junmo was shocked by Jong's condition. He confirms that it's really him, and Junmo asks how. Jong says that a lot has happened and that he has a lot to tell. He told Junmo what had happened. Junmo was surprised that Jong's sister had contracted the AM virus during the portal break, and he asked if Jong was okay. He replied that he was, and that Mana was different even within the same family. Junmo asked if he received a mission from the Keenest Guild, and he responded that yes, they saved his family, and he was going to save theirs. Junmo says he was surprised that he couldn't get in touch. Jong says that he lost his phone and is using number 2's phone, and Junmo asks if he's backed up his contacts. Junmo reminds him of his friends and other important people, but Jong says it's better this way. Junmo asks how he got the injuries. He explained that it was the guild mission he had mentioned. He said he needed stats, so they went to train, and that's how he got like this. Junmo thought they overdid it, and said he would complain about the guild. Jong told him to relax because he had agreed to it. Wanti's younger sister is trapped in the dungeon, and he must be desperate, and Jong said he knows how that feels. He said that today he just got beaten, but he's planning to use clones in the next training. Junmo said he would get some healing potions from the office. The next day, at the training field, Jong thanked him for training him. Wante says he brought a clone. Jong says that today would be different from yesterday, as he advanced. Sometime later, he and his clone walked out covered in bandages. The next day, he brought 2 clones, but the 3 came out bandaged. The following day, he went to train again, but this time he brought 3 clones, but they still lost. The 4 went to Junmo's office, who asked if they were okay. Jong thought that even though the clones learn moves just by watching, there was still a huge gap between their stats. He needed to find a way to fill that gap, while he thought that clones were all about bandages, potions, and rest. But after thinking so much, he had an idea. He asked Junmo if it was possible, and he replied that it was. Junmo said he could try to get that, but he asked if it was safe. Jong told him not to worry. Already at the training field, Wante said he was happy to see him working hard, but he was surprised by what he saw. It was a transformed clone, not just 1, but 3 of them. The agent was satisfied and had already arrived with the box, saying he had gotten it. Jong checked if it was as expected, as the agent worked very quickly. He had bought everything in a rush, so it wasn't much. However, looking at the box, he realized it would be enough. The next day, he arrived to train with himself and the 3 clones, but things seemed a bit different. Hunter Park asked what he had done with the clones, but then he showed a red gem. He explained that he had given them 60 gems. He explained that the clones were considered summoned creatures and could absorb the gems. Hunter Park was startled to realize that the gems could be used by the clones. However, the young hunter wanted to use all of them that day, already prepared with that sword. Park Wone noticed that he was using a certain state, or something else. He told him to come at him with the intention of testing it out. He, along with the clones, surrounded Hunter Park. Park immediately noticed the cycle in view of the chest and returned to him. He also noticed that his abilities had increased significantly, knowing this because the abilities were usually weaker. It must have been the effect of the gems, but it seemed like the monsterization effect was stronger. Even so, he was stronger than all of them combined. He was doing this so they could grow stronger by absorbing the gems, but the biggest advantage of the clone was that this dropped significantly. The young hunter was satisfied, but he had not become a monster. At one point, he managed to catch Hunter Park off guard. Even shooting him, the projectile bullet didn't penetrate. However, the young hunter knew he wouldn't be able to hurt him, not even with a mana bullet. At that moment, Jong struck him again. It seemed like a signal, as all the clones followed his lead. But it wasn't strong enough. Park told him that simply holding a sword and swinging with brute force wouldn't be enough. He warned him that he should pour mana into his arms and sword as if they were one. He commented that if he mastered that, he could cut through monsters even with tree branches. Jong realized that his wooden sword seemed stronger than a steel one. However, he wasn't willing to lose. Park told him that he had indeed gotten stronger and could increase his capacity even more by consuming the gems. But even that wouldn't be enough. He said this while striking all 4 of them at once. He said he couldn't consider him a fighter just at that level. Receiving that blow to the face, Jong said that might be the case at that moment. However, the young hunter knew that soon it would be different. Even though his clones were already on the ground, he remained standing and kept trying to fight Park. Looking into his eyes and saying he didn't intend to stop at rank C, he asked the clones to look where he was standing. The clones then looked in that direction. That's when the original asked them to pay attention to the captain's face. He asked where else they had seen that angular nose and sharp features. He shouted that the captain was a gem, and at that moment, the clones began to see him as a gem. Jong told them that if they accepted it, he would be the first to win, and he asked the clones to start biting him. After saying this, he told the captain that, to be honest, the reason he decided to get stronger wasn't just because of his request. He had felt something when he opened his eyes in the hospital. That feeling of helplessness from trusting his family's life to someone else in the middle of a disaster. Knowing that other people were starting a search, and they would only find what was left of a monster. The hatred of being weak. Elsewhere, there were hunters with the same feeling. No matter how much they attacked the monster, it didn't even move. It was the feeling of despair he had after his efforts didn't reflect in the outcome. He never wanted to feel that way again. He didn't need to worry about his current capacity. At that moment, he launched himself again at the hunter. He said he never intended to stop. However, 6 months had passed, and in the hunting field of Sinseildong Station, he was kicking a boy out of there. After blocking the hunter and throwing him to the ground, his friend came to defend him. They didn't understand why they were doing that since they had official permission to enter that hunting field. The bullies who were occupying that hunting field claimed to be from the Silverwind Guild. Despite the presence of a few guards there, they simply pretended not to see the commotion. The hunter noticed that they didn't care at all about the situation. However, one of the bullies wanted to take the hunter to the hunting ground with them. They said that their leader was really a very sweet guy. Their leader told them to be quiet because they were scaring everyone. Jong, arriving at the hunting ground, noticed some kind of commotion. The leader of that guild overheard the young man talking to one of the guards. The guard was warning him not to go in that direction because there was a situation happening. The leader of that guild asked if he was stupid. He said that the hunting ground was being used by the Silverwind Guild. Saying that, he tried to punch him in the face, but he immediately countered, causing the leader to feel slight discomfort. As for the other hunters, who hadn't had the chance to enter the hunting ground, they were just watching. The young hunter asked what one should do when someone tried to punch them in the face. Then he said he thought he had heard the name of that guild somewhere. I might think about it, but it makes no sense. Then he asked what his entrance into the hunting ground had to do with that guild. The other members of the same guild were upset with him, and they couldn't believe he was picking a fight with that guild. They also said he wouldn't be able to get away from this, because they were all D-class hunters, and asked if he thought he could handle all of them alone. The young man, ironically, asked if he was alone. Right after those words, his clones began to appear. Only then did they realize that they were the ones in trouble. However, they started asking who those bastards were. The young hunter asked if they could repeat what they said about him being alone. Elsewhere, at Agent Junmo's office, he was receiving a visit from Mr. Park one day, who was apologizing for the late hour. Mr. Junmo said not to worry, as he should have gone to see him. After opening a drawer, he took out a document and was about to hand it to the hunter. He said that, as it was personal information, he couldn't take a picture and would have to return it immediately. After looking at the document, he noticed that the young man's stats had increased a lot in just 6 months. His agent said that recently he seemed like a completely different person. Mr. Junmo needed to know if those stats would be enough for him to execute the plan. The growth he had achieved was monstrous, and they were about to start the mission to rescue the number 1 team. Park thought that he had surpassed D-class and was almost at C-class. He could become a high-level hunter someday. Back at the hunting ground, the guards were dumbfounded. The clones were putting those bullies in their place. Meanwhile, the other hunters, who had been targeted by those bullies, were feeling revitalized, and the fight continued. The guards were shouting for them to stop the attack. Zhang asked them to stop what, and the guards said it had already gone too far, and he couldn't do that. The young hunter told the guard that he should have said that when the other hunters were getting beaten. He said he wouldn't blame the guards, but that they could just keep watching the entrance as they had before. Then, he ordered the clones to break all their phones so they couldn't contact the others. The 3 hunters who had already been beaten were thinking of going somewhere else. Something was happening inside that hunting ground. There was someone who was apparently collecting jewels. However, he seemed too tired to continue doing it. Sitting down, he wondered why he should keep going. At that moment, he heard a noise coming from the entrance and thought it might be an inspection. When the young hunter entered, the other person inside told him he needed a little more time to complete his quota. Then he realized that it wasn't a guard. Zhang said he remembered him from the horned rabbit hunt. He greeted him, saying it had been a long time since he'd seen him, even calling him by name. Now Ajusi remembered where he had seen that guy, but he also saw 3 more people enter with him. He asked how he managed to get in, as he was sure the Silverwind Guild members were guarding the entrance. Zhang wanted to know how someone as weak as him could be in a D-class dungeon. He also said that, judging by his appearance, he didn't think he was there to hunt. He realized that he was just there to pick up the scraps left by other hunters. He asked if the Silverwind Guild had let him in there. With his phone, he said he only felt sorry for him but needed to hear what had happened there. At that moment, he showed his phone screen and said there was no need to worry about those bastards at the gate. Ajusi wanted to know how those people, who were all class hunters, had made that determination. He was told to start talking or he would end up like them. He began by saying that Zhang should know that class monsters dropped gems when they were defeated. Zhang mentioned that he didn't know those only came from higher class monsters. Ajusi continued explaining that those gems stayed in the monsters' bodies for a long time, even after they were defeated. In a dungeon, it was common for monsters to fight among themselves, and when that happened, instead of dropping 1 gem, they dropped 2. He explained that this is how gems accumulated inside the dungeon. He wanted to know how the other people had gotten involved in that. He said they either had debts with the guild, or were sold to the guilds by someone. He explained that most had debts or were rookie hunters, and if someone got caught by a monster there, nothing could be done. Zhang stayed silent, just listening to what he had to say. Even in silence, he was comparing that situation to a game, and he thought he would never witness something like that in reality. Being kind, he told the guy he could go. However, it seemed that he didn't understand and repeated that he should go before he changed his mind. And as the man was leaving, Zhang heard him saying to leave the gems behind. He told him that just because he got emotional didn't mean he would believe the 2 of them had a good relationship. Upon opening the bag, he realized there were quite a lot of gems. He had collected many. He handed the bag of gems to number 1 and ordered him to eat them. Number 1 started eating them like there was no tomorrow. A hunter began running, seemingly scared of something. He was shouting because a monster was chasing him. He was running from a Class C monster. That guy was just a worker for the Silverwind Guild. Kim Yu-Hyan was running from a Class C monster known as an abomination. During his escape, his foot twisted, causing the guy to fall. He was now on the ground in front of the monster. He even closed his eyes so he wouldn't have to see that his end would come in a place like that. However, he felt someone grab him by the collar and politely asked for permission to do so. The young hunter lifted the guy high, avoiding the monster's strike. Kim Yu-Hyan wanted to know who that person was. Zhang introduced himself as his savior. He was interested in the gems, but was told they had been left behind a long time ago. The other curiosity he had was why he was talking about the Haisum Guild, because the other guys outside had said they were from a different guild. However, Kim wasn't comfortable saying anything with that monster around, and suddenly another being appeared. which also had a different appearance. Nonetheless, Jong insisted on getting answers, wanting the guy to respond about the guild in question. Without warning, the guy started running again to try to save his life. All he managed was to get grabbed by the collar again. He still couldn't escape, as he hadn't answered his questions. But Kim didn't know how he could be so at ease with monsters around. Jong asked him not to pay attention to the events happening there. Kim Yoo-hyun looked at the situation and couldn't tell if it was a team or if that guy was just a summoner. What was certain was that the young hunter told him he would be safe there. At that exact moment, one of the clones was quickly losing the fight. Even watching, he couldn't believe it had lost. He wasn't satisfied, as he had given them expensive gems to eat, and still they were losing, and the monster continued staring them all down. The guy thought he should run, but the hunter's order was to stay. He couldn't understand why they were fed expensive things, yet they were all failing. Realizing that the guy was going to flee, he ordered him to stay still for a moment, because he needed to concentrate a little. He was already holding the sword, ready to face the monster. Now he had the cursed sword, and the monster had a bone sword. Even so, the monster was getting the worst of it. He only wanted to get rid of the monster as quickly as possible. The strikes were fast and precise. He looked from a distance and realized how strong the young hunter was. Jong was confident he would eliminate that monster, even though it was Class C. No matter how much the monster roared and stared him down, all he could see in front of him was the monster that had attacked his sister. He closed his eyes and tried to calm himself for a moment. Kim, realizing the danger, shouted for him to be careful. His clones charged at the monster to defend the original. He also joined the fight and split the monster in half. The monster quickly felt the impact of that fatal strike. In his eyes, it was clear that he was no longer playing around with any monster, regardless of its class. However, he found it quite disgusting every time he used that sword. Kim Yoo-hyun was amazed at how he defeated that abomination. One of his clones was lying on the ground, and he was observing. He knelt next to number 1 and asked if he was okay. However, he noticed that he had a strange wound that wasn't healing. Kim told him that the abomination's bone sword carried a corrosion curse. Jong found it annoying because they had eaten many jewels and only focused on striking, forgetting to dodge. When asked if the boy on the ground was human, the young hunter simply said that you could call him a summoner. The boy made a few facial expressions, but that was all. After a moment, he handed him something in a vial and said that if he used it, he could live a little longer. He also said he wouldn't take responsibility for anything. Jong looked at it and asked what it was and if it was medicine. He also noticed a skull drawn on it. It wasn't like he had any other choice, so he gave it to number 1 to drink. After that, he waited for some kind of reaction. Indeed, the cut seemed to be shrinking. He thought it had an incredible effect and asked what kind of medicine it was, because in no time, number 1 was already sitting up. He was happy, thinking it was fantastic that his clone was getting better. However, that strange young man said it was only temporary, as there was a side effect. The clone's life force would be drained. He also said his ability was poisoned, and it was at level 5. He explained that the clone's energy would eventually deplete until he ceased to exist. After hearing all this, Jong gave orders to the clone. Since he was going to disappear, it was better to start hunting right away. As the young man had said, he expected the clone to do the same. Jong also wanted to know who he was. He found it odd that the guy had monsters as pets, and all of them were individually very strong. Jong said he couldn't see him in the B-class hunters because he was an E-class hunter. The question arose about how an E-class hunter was in a D-class dungeon, and how it was possible to hunt there with ease. It wasn't just him who had questions. Jong had his own and was ready to ask them. The first was why he was talking to him as if they were friends. At the YOLO Guild warehouse, some boxes were being moved, all under the supervision of the guild master. They asked if that was enough. Guild manager Kim Siena asked why they suddenly started collecting those things since it wasn't her usual style. When she found out it was a favor from Mr. Wontae, she asked why he would need so much. She explained that it was Jong Sang-woon who was using all of it, and they heard that he was the one using everything. Kim Yoo-hyun thought that had already made him sensitive about it. However, he only did it because he thought it might be some kind of bad guy, intending to stay one step ahead. But then he said that if she wanted to talk to him comfortably, she could. Jong realized that he was just an idiot after all. Standing up, he said that wasn't the only thing he wanted to ask. He also wanted to know why the Haesum Guild was mentioned. Kim thought it was something he should know since he was a hunter, but Jong replied that he had only recently gotten his license. He then asked if he had also been caught with the others. At that moment, he had a brief memory of a girl opening a door and facing a complicated situation, but he simply responded that he didn't need to know about it. He also thought he was going crazy because he even told him about his ability. Jong said goodbye, as he hadn't gotten the information he wanted. Kim didn't like it because he thought they could have talked more. As Jong was leaving, he told him he could go because there was no one else important. Preparing to leave, Jong remembered that he wanted to give him something, as he thought the ability he used was very good. However, Kim thought he was just mocking his ability. If he didn't have a place to work, or was afraid of the Haesum Guild taking revenge on him, he could contact him through that card. He asked number 5 to escort the boy to the entrance. Jong thought his ability would be useful for the clones, but he wasn't sure if he should try to convince him more firmly. He paused for a moment to observe how efficiently the clones were destroying the monsters. All those jewels had done wonders for the clones. However, the side effects of the medicine he received were starting to show. However, number 1 ended up collapsing, despite thinking he could endure a little longer with his regeneration ability. After that, he summoned number 2 again. Once he returned, he asked him to get dressed, because they were about to start hunting again. Unknowingly, they were being watched. As soon as he noticed that he had gone, he informed the other companion who was also waiting for him. Both were from the Silver Moon Guild and were talking about Zhang's clones, thinking it was a single person. One of them seemed to know there was something hidden in a false wall. He wanted to check at least that place. To their delight, they found the place that appeared to be abandoned. One of them asked why they built that place, and the other replied that it was for the materials to be supplied immediately in the hunting field. It also dealt with narcotics, but that was worth much more. It was about crystal jewels that would be densely refined. Their capacity was 100 times greater than common jewels, and just one of those would increase stats by 0.5. However, the other thought the side effects were not worth it. What good are great stats if the person turns into a monster? However, everything changed when they discovered a place where they processed it once again, creating a product that could be used by people. It was clear that they could make millions from that. They decided not to leave it there and to return the next day. They didn't want to risk being approached by others and losing everything. Kim Yu-hyan was greatly surprised when he realized he had been found. It was hard to shake off the clones. They were very stubborn and wanted to take him to the entrance. He had to keep telling them to go back. In the end, it was a good decision to stay in that hunting field, but unfortunately, those other hunters from the Silver Moon Guild took him. He found the crystal jewels he was looking for, and there were plenty, so he stuffed them into his waistband, filling it up. But he thought it might look weird, noticing that some people were leaving and being directed to the right place. He realized he could blend in with those people. The clone noticed that he was among the others. It didn't try to stop him, as the mission was to escort him to the entrance, and it saw that he had left safely, so the mission was complete. Once he realized he could escape, he fled as fast as he could. He was happy to leave both guilds behind. Zhang was satisfied because he had let the people escape to safety and had already dealt with the monsters. They had bags full of jewels. He even wondered why jewels were in short supply in stores these days, but this was much better. The clones, looking, thought they should eat all of them, but their master said that if they ate, they would turn into monsters. He received a notification on his phone and paused to look at a message saying the mission would be explained the next day. The next day, when the two returned to retrieve their crystal jewels, they were no longer there. They were very distressed because the expiration date was the next day, and they didn't know what they were going to do. They began pressuring the guards to see if they could get any information, asking who they let into that place. The guards said the only thing they agreed to was letting them in, but they couldn't prevent other hunters from entering there. He told him that the only person who went in was the guy who hit him. Besides the people they imprisoned there, the only one who went in was a guy who had a conflict with them. They were remembering that strange guy and his accomplices, wondering why it had to be them. Wandering through the dark night, Kim was still irritated at being placed in a C-rank dungeon. He acknowledges that he would have died without Zhang's help. Kim is satisfied that he didn't gain anything valuable. Knowing that the Silver Moon Guild would suspect if he sold the jewels at that moment, Kim decides to just hide them for a while. The business card Zhang gave him fell out of his pocket. He notices the card and looks at it for a moment. Kim remembers Zhang praising his ability. Even so, Kim doesn't give it much importance. He is determined not to join Zhang just because he was complimented. Odin Tower, that was the place where team number 1 of the Keenest Guild, including Wante's sister, the team leader, was trapped. Zhang doesn't understand what Mr. Wante means by trapped in the dungeon. He begins to explain that the Odin Tower is a dungeon with a special structure. It has an entrance but no exit. What connects it to the outside world is mana. The only way to contact those inside is by using a telepathy skill. He goes on to say that because of this, the place is limited. The only way out is by finishing the dungeon or using a teleportation skill. And this is the reason why the cloning ability is important, because other hunters wouldn't be able to escape if something went wrong in the dungeon. Zhang asks if there wasn't a way for Team 1 to escape on their own strength. Team 1 was equipped with a way out, which makes Zhang ask why they hadn't fled yet. The man shows sadness and says nothing for a moment. Then, he says he's going to tell everything about what happened in Odin's Tower and how everything went wrong. 5 years before the Great Disaster, the year 2005, Wante's sister unlocked her ability in a dark age. Not long after the disaster ended. Even young, she was already hunting monsters. Park Wante was 16 years old. During a hunting mission, Yuna, 9 years old, came to him, walking through the destroyed city with ease and offering a snack. Wante was worried about his sister, who casually said she wasn't hurt. That day, his sister had manifested her subspace storage ability. He asks Yuna how she was doing that, and she replies that it just happened and that she could store many things inside. Yuna offers the snack to her brother again, who refuses and tells her she can eat it. Acting encouragingly, Wante tells little Yuna that she got a good ability and suggests that they go to sleep, and she agrees because she's sleepy. She asks when Ajusi would return, and Wante says in 20 days, but he seemed to know it wasn't true. The sibling duo went through many situations when they were young, saving themselves with Yuna's subspace ability. They could store items and even people inside the subspace. Wante remembers many adventures he went through with his sister, from the first time they wanted to enter a dungeon. When Yuna caught an alien fish, he remembered watching her grow up. And when she was preparing to enter Odin's Tower, she was already the leader of Team 1 of the Keenest Guild. Wante was very worried about the upcoming mission. It would have been right to have at least one teleportation ability user for the mission, but people with this ability are rare. Yuna also adds that this was the only chance she could save herself with subspace. Wante prepares to argue, but he is interrupted by his sister, who questions if he truly trusted her for that mission. The whole time, he He wasn't sure if they would be able to clear Odin's tower. All the members of Team 1 seemed confident in Yuna, but Wontae was still worried about her and all of Team 1. Yuna said she would come back if things got dangerous. She speaks persuasive words to convince Wontae to agree. Deep down he knew he shouldn't have let himself be convinced, but she seemed sure of herself, and she confidently says that, besides the teleportation scrolls, she was carrying months of provisions in the subspace. Wontae felt that he shouldn't feel relieved by something like emergency supplies. The entire Team 1 gathers and sets off for the mission. Wontae wanted to and should have stopped them, but they ended up going. On the day Team 1 entered Odin's tower, she said they had prepared for years and were already determined. She also adds that he, as the guild master, more than anyone, should trust his teams. Reluctantly, he agrees that he can only trust them. The assistant says that Mr. Wontae will have to leave soon. The vice leader asks if he has an appointment. He also tells her that it was his turn to host the Awakening program. Interrupting, Zhang comments that he participated in that very program, but adds that, even if he had seen him, he wouldn't recognize Zhang since he had changed a lot. Mr. Junmo asks Wontae if he had contacted Team 1, then says they used telepathy scrolls, and a team stayed at the entrance of Odin's tower to establish a connection. There were no problems in the first report. The second and third reports also went well, so he started to calm down. But there was a problem after 1 month. They were preparing to receive the next report. Team 1 was about to reach 40 kilometers inside the first floor, about to activate the telepathy scroll. The scroll is slowly activated. Then the telepathic connection is established. The telepathy receiver seemed incredulous about something. Then he shouts that a report was coming in. They had progressed 700 meters after the last section of the first floor, but they were ambushed by an unknown monster. Most of the team members were fighting the monster, and many had been injured. Suddenly, the telepathic communication was overwhelmed, almost destroying the receiver's minds. Many telepathy scrolls had been used at the same time. One asked them to control the mana flow from there. A portal opens next to him. When he quickly turned to look, already expecting the worst scenario, someone had used the teleportation scroll, catching everyone there by surprise. The person began to step out of the portal. They were severely injured, in a very grave state. This was the result of being irresponsible for trusting too much in Team 1. The weak decision to try to save them at that moment crumbled before his eyes. After a member of Team 1 managed to return using the teleportation, Park Wontae ordered them to retrieve the team at that instant. However, as they passed, the second portal closed. Even though it was right in front of his eyes, it didn't seem real that the portal had shut so suddenly. The one responsible for magic in that guild set up a containment area around the cabin where the team was located. She asked the person in charge of communication to wake up because she needed to know if telepathy was still connected. She wanted them to tell the team to only check outside at 2 in the afternoon and not leave the subdimension. Sontae, despite being very injured, was saddened because they had failed. The monsters had torn a piece of the scrolls. Park was worried about the situation and the severity of the injuries. He thought Sontae should be transferred to a hospital. After removing the severely injured man, Park remained kneeling in the same place. Later, they were informed that he had been discharged and wanted them to know. The telepathy was still connected, so she would just repeat what they said. It was his sister who said the battle was over and apologized because she thought they had failed the mission. They could wait, so they shouldn't rush too much to get things done. They promised they would return alive, no matter what happened. Those were their last words. After that, they tried to contact several hunters, but when the Odin Tower was mentioned, none of them took the job. Even well-trained hunters with their pets ignored that mission because they thought it was too complicated. And after that, the story that everyone knows happened. The portals collapsed. Soon after, he learned about the cloning ability. Park wanted him to have the necessary stats because he should be able to get as far as the team had gone. He said this was the time to carry out the rescue mission. The keenest guild wanted to enter the Odin Tower. There was another place where the people who had lost the jewel crystals were in serious trouble. They hadn't been able to complete the task they were given. They still wanted the leader of the Silvermoon Guild to believe what they were saying. It was best to listen to what that mediocre guy had to say. Most of them were wearing masks. There was one guy who wasn't, but he wasn't on the hunter list. Yan Jukio concluded that they had been cornered by an E-class hunter. He asked if they thought they were the only ones dealing with jewel crystals every day. If I couldn't gather the amount I needed to deliver, Hyson possibly wouldn't wait. The guy who was lying on the ground was trembling with fear. Once again, they told him to get up and face the situation. Everyone watched without knowing what to say. The leader knew he would get beaten up by him again, but he didn't know where to get the jewels. So he spoke to Cheon-song, who should go. He thought he could find out something about it by beating up a few people. The next day, at JM Agency, on the way to the office, Zhang commented that he thought he had seen something Park hadn't mentioned. The reason why they tried to clear the Odin Tower. He didn't know much about the hunter industry, but he knew the Odin Tower, which had already been conquered in 2012. According to Jumper, who gave an interview mentioning he had conquered and successfully completed the Odin Tower mission. At the time, he commented that the Odin Tower was empty. The only thing left was a monster, and there were no more treasures or items. That's why there was suspicion. He didn't even explain why his best team tried to clear that dungeon. He didn't want any more information about it. He was going to complete the mission and rescue them, so he would simply focus on that. While talking, he saw someone outside. They were quiet, looking like they were asleep. Junmo asked who that was. Zhang mentioned that he had met him in the hunting field. Then Mr. Junmo excused himself, introduced himself, and said that this was the JM Agency. After that nap, he slowly stretched and came back to himself. At that moment, her stomach growled. indicating that she was hungry. At that moment, the three of them fell silent. Then they thought it best to eat first. They went somewhere to eat and were even surprised at how much she ate. Jong asked if she was really that hungry. He told her he had saved his number on her phone in case she wanted to get in touch. He also said he could see that she was going to work at the agency. Shyly, he replied yes. The agent wanted to know what that person's ability was. He replied that it was a little bit of item appraisal and potion making. At that moment, Jong opened his mouth wide and said that the person would die after drinking. Pulling at his hair, he said there were also potions that didn't kill. He said that, according to the legend, it had a great effect, so he would like to use the abilities if possible. Approaching him, the agent asked if it was in the plans to use that on the clones, to which he slyly replied yes. The agent promptly offered some equipment for potion making and even offered some funds as well. However, the young hunter needed to leave, asking to finish his meal since he was leaving right then. Kim asked if he was going somewhere, and he replied he was going to a dungeon. But this time, he wouldn't be hunting. The goal was different. Kim remained silent, observing. Shortly after, he tossed him 2 potions. He mentioned that he had made them earlier. One was for strength, and the other for mana. There were side effects, and he quickly asked which ones, to which he replied that the strength potion melted muscles and the mana potion made the body explode. Jong found it all very exciting. He called his clones to go along with him, and commented that he would buy them food when he returned. Kim Siana was on the phone confirming if she should collect all the jewels and move them to the Keenest Guild. She said she would get in touch as soon as she finished. However, seeing the guard lying on the floor didn't catch her attention much. As she got closer, she noticed that all the security guards were down, and there was a crack in the wall. She thought she would use it to rob the guild's vault, as she had an ability to detect intruders. She could see them hiding inside. You rush forward to pass through the crack and catch them. But there was also someone in the crack that was surprising her. She thought she was sure she had detected someone, but only inside the vault. She wanted to know who was there, but she was struck. The vice leader of the Silverwind Guild didn't expect her to answer that question. He said sorry, but he really needed those jewels, and it was urgent. After leaving her unconscious on the ground, he asked his henchmen if they had managed to grab everything. After that, they poured a flammable liquid and set the place on fire. They thought they were fine with the jewels for now. Far away in Iceland, the jet was landing. Jong was saying that it was the first time he visited another country. They were close to the portal that connected to Odin's tower. The guards told Jong he could enter since it was being guarded. However, he noticed that something was wrong. Even so, he didn't stop and just kept walking, until he reached a somewhat different place. He realized that the entrance to the tower was far from what he imagined. It was a bottomless cliff, with a vast space on the other side. He started feeling very cold and decided to head to the guild's headquarters. The news had already arrived there that all the jewels had disappeared. Jong arrived right when they were reporting the incident about the jewels. Mr. Park was very pleased to see him arrive. They ordered a coat to be prepared for him. They also gave one to his clones. Quickly, they showed the place where the first team had disappeared, which was 40 kilometers from the entrance. Jong thought that was a short distance to say they had traveled for an entire month. For that mission, he had prepared 3 teleportation scrolls in case of an emergency, and thought he should leave them with the clones. It was important for their plan that they remained safe, and to use them was easy. The location was already marked on the scroll, so all they had to do was tear it. Avasiliate said that Team 1 checked the situation outside and was sure there were signs of a possible battle. Mr. Park was wrapping up, asking if there was anything else they needed to know. All he wanted to know was what they were going to have for dinner if, by any chance, his sister returned with him. Very proudly, he said he would eat homemade food. Already preparing to leave, he grabbed his sword and the potions as well. Everyone ready, the clones announced they were departing. Watching them go, he sat in his chair and prepared to leave too. He activated his familiar ability. When he did so, Mr. Park turned to look at him. Right after, he thought that now everything was in his hands and his clones. He realized that the familiar ability was working perfectly. In a snowstorm, it was strong, but the cold resistance was relatively high, even without feeling cold. Around them, everything seemed like an eternal snowstorm, which they had to cross to get a little further. They seemed to have spotted Odin's tower. They were communicating among themselves, and they announced they had arrived. One of the clones was acting strange, and it stayed that way for a while. Jong found it very odd because he was in full control of clone number 1's body. He could easily command where to go, and he did so, telling them where they should head. He warned that they had to rescue team number 1. Since everything was blocked, he wanted to know how that place was made. He looked at the chart to check which monsters would appear at the beginning of the tower. They would be the ice bats. The E-class monsters that began to appear at the start always traveled in groups. Therefore, they had to stay alert in all directions, and one of their characteristics was always having a boss among the group of ice bats, the D-class monster, the ice bat boss. One of the clones dealt with that boss. In moments, everything was over. And as always, that sword was terribly dirty, so much so that the clone even felt a bit of disgust. After clearing that area, they continued moving forward. Even as they advanced, some bats still appeared. The impression was that it wasn't over yet. They had already traveled about 13 kilometers. So, being about a quarter of the way, according to the instructions, they should soon encounter new monsters. After saying this, some larger monsters appeared. All the clones gathered to observe. Those monsters had a magical projectile ability, charging their bullets with mana before firing them. The order was for 3 to support from the back and 2 to stay in the front. All those monsters seemed strangely furious. With no other choice, the clones went on the offensive. Those monsters were a bit stronger than the previous ones. Even so, the clones were handling it. You could even say with some ease. It would be great if they could keep going like that. However, it seemed like something was shaking everything. Looking at the ground, they realized there were cracks all around. The whole situation seemed very problematic. On the other hand, at the guild's camp, the original was safe. The vice leader made her concern clear because that was a complicated place. Even the first team had its difficulties. Park expressed his opinion, saying it was an operation where they could infiltrate that place secretly, avoiding fights. However, the growth rate of Hunter Jong Sangwoon had exceeded his expectations. Even she was startled to realize that his stats were already at the level of a B-rank hunter. However, the most important thing was that the clones were also getting stronger. You could say their stats were also at B-rank. Seeing this, the leader considered the average ranking of Team 1, which was B-rank. Looking at that young man, he realized that he alone was worth the entire team. That's how he saw it. He also made it clear that if the YOLO Guild's warehouse hadn't been raided, things could have been much better. It was certain that the legend of the ice golem mentioned in the report didn't exist, and there were no other monsters that could stop them on the first floor. Park was sure he had warned him about the ice golem, so he should be able to avoid it and proceed safely. He thought it would be really hard to pass without noticing that huge monster. However, that's what happened on the battlefield. None of them noticed that huge monster, and now they would have to fight it. He was thinking of a way to attack without any casualties, even being hit with a very powerful sword. Not even scratches were made on it. Number 1, completely commanded by Jong, knew that the mistake was his. The monster kept dodging attacks while attacking at the same time. He knew he wouldn't be able to cause damage if he couldn't hit it with that sword. However, there was also the imminent danger of those other beasts that still hadn't been controlled. They were also attacking that giant ice golem. However, it simply grabbed and devoured them as its meals. This caused some fear among the clones. Not satisfied, the golem reached out to grab another one of the clones. Realizing this, Jong shouted for him to dodge. Even with everyone dodging at the moment, they were told. That monster's attack was so fierce that it even sent the smaller monsters flying. Number 1 knew he had to aim for the golem's core. He was watching and trying to find where the core was while it kept devouring the smaller beasts. He might have found it. Now it was a matter of how to destroy that thing. The magic bullets also had no effect on it, no matter how many the clones fired at the same time. The situation was becoming more and more critical, and the golem kept moving towards them the whole time. Number 1 yelled for everyone to get out of the monster's reach. However, its attacks kept getting stronger, not giving them time to dodge. One of the clones didn't have time to get out of the way, and number 5 was caught by that golem. It was difficult because number 5 had a teleportation scroll. It was at that moment that Jong had an idea. He went all out towards the golem, which was grabbing number 5 by the legs. It was already putting him into its mouth, just as it had done with the smaller beasts. However, number 1 threw himself in to attempt one last attack, trying to get as close as possible to number 5, before he was swallowed by that ice golem. The other clones watched to see how the golem would react. Number 1 fell to the ground after achieving the goal he was aiming for. Suddenly, that giant monster started having some adverse reactions. Now number 1 was satisfied. Looking at the monster, he asked if it liked what it had just swallowed, and showed a piece of a torn scroll, asking if it knew what that was. The force of the impact seemed to go straight to the core of the large golem. Quickly, the effects of the scroll's summoning began to manifest. When he jumped closer to number 5, he had the teleportation scroll in mind. He thought that if he couldn't break the core, he should try something else. He would simply teleport. Quickly, there was a reaction, a sort of explosion. Now, number 1 was satisfied. A kind of portal was created, and the golem was thrown into that dimension. As the portal was closing, the golem seemed displeased with that outcome. Jong thought that the people around might be a little scared. When it fell, it looked like a huge block of ice. At the same moment, strength, vitality, dexterity, among other abilities, were increased. Looking at it, he was very satisfied, because unlike other abilities, he couldn't, in any way, level up his ability to create clones. But anyway, he wasn't going to summon another one at that moment. He just wanted to keep going. In another place, a young man was taking a bath. Still in his robe, he noticed a notification saying that the list of people who had requested to see him that month was available. Over the phone, he asked if any of them were from a South Korean guild. Receiving a negative answer, none of them had sought him out that month. He found it absurd. He also thought that some things were changing. Finishing dressing, he said to reject all of them. Looking in the mirror, he wanted to proceed with the academy's inauguration ceremony. Elsewhere, Park Gapsa was eating instant noodles. Gyun Seok-hyung said it wasn't surprising, since even he couldn't find him. He asked if he had been caught by Silverwind. He had been handed over due to some problems he caused. Even so, Hyung saw some talent in him. However, he mentioned that he had received some help. In the end, what mattered was that he was there, and since they were quite busy, he could get back to business. However, a noise at the door caught their attention. When Hyung reached the door and opened it slightly, he had an unpleasant surprise. The person on the other side simply struck him. throwing him far away, leaving his companion worried about him. However, the one entering was calling for Park Gapsu. He found it interesting to find him right there. He warned that he wouldn't waste his time, so he should just tell him who had attacked his guild members. He added that, for his information, he was the third person he had asked. Gyunseok Hyung didn't like seeing people invading his house. Staring at the vice leader of the Silverwind Guild, he asked what he thought he was doing in someone else's house. However, the attack he had prepared was easily neutralized by that man, who merely blocked it and told him that if he liked to show off his strength, he should also know that he was very strong, and that from that moment on, he would make sure he could handle whoever was picking a fight. Seeing someone like that acting arrogantly really made him angry. Park Gapsa was horrified to see that. He shouted for them to stop, saying he would go with them. Kang Cheon-sung struck him, asking what he was talking about. He made it clear that he would go with them regardless, so he shouldn't think himself generous. He also told him not to worry about his friend getting beaten. It wasn't because of him. It was because he was arrogant, so he needed to be taught a lesson. Park Gapsu, knowing things were taking a dangerous turn, began to fear for his companion's life. He shouted that he knew who it was. The vice leader of the guild wanted to know what he was talking about. Kneeling in front of him, in acts of submission, he said he knew who had attacked the guild. He begged that, just this once, he show a little mercy. Kang Cheon-sung, fixing his hair, didn't seem too inclined to do so. With a different look, he commented that by just hitting a few people, the truth would soon come out. Returning to the clones and the attempt to save Team Number 1, they were moving slowly for now, trying to find more monsters. They were told to stay alert from that point on. It was strange because they hadn't seen any monsters for a while. However, there was evidence that intense battles had taken place in that area. I understood why there were monster remains there, but there were also human remains. Number 1 wanted to know the current location and said they were close to their destination. From that point on, they would need to search for any trace of a fight that the team might have had. It was also mentioned that he would go out to check every day at 2 in the afternoon, and it was almost time for that. At that moment, he realized there was a presence there. The attack, despite being very fast, was noticed. The enemy seemed to emerge from the shadows and strike. None of the clones knew exactly what it was. It had appeared out of nowhere, as if its ability was invisibility. Even though the monster had appeared unexpectedly, it was contained. But they also noticed that there were thousands more just like it. Quickly, the ice was completely covered with monsters that had appeared out of nowhere. That's when he remembered the unexplained monster remains. There had to be a reason why the attack team couldn't reach the dungeon entrance. However, now that they had fallen into their trap, there didn't seem to be much they could do, except to attack with the same speed and ferocity. They tried their best to destroy as many as they could. The plan was to push all those monsters to the side. Somehow, it seemed that their numbers only increased, but within moments they disappeared, only to return and try to catch the others by surprise. Thus, he couldn't see them. However, he noticed that the other clones could. He didn't understand how the clones were blocking the attacks from those invisible monsters. To them, it seemed easy. At that moment, he thought it best to let Number 1 take control while he just observed. And so it was done. While Number 1 fought, he observed. He even thought he had figured out how to handle the invisible monsters. By watching, he realized that the clones first detected the sound, and that's why they blocked so quickly. He observed each clone and the way they dodged the invisible monsters' attacks. Even without being able to see them, it was the sound of the wind that made them react the moment the monsters moved. He thought that would be enough, but he couldn't replicate it. He knew that to have the mobility of the clones, he would have to train a lot. Inside the sub-dimension area, someone was calling for the captain, trying to get her attention because it was almost 2, and they should check the situation outside. She, very discouraged, said they were right. They wondered if the rescue team would be there that day. Exhausted and without hope, she got up to do what she always did at 2 o'clock. She no longer had the strength to keep encouraging them to hope. She was sure it would be the same thing that day too. What was chilling? The silent ice field would repeat itself. However, upon hearing sounds, she couldn't believe it was possible. The clones realized they were surrounded on all sides. The enemy was everywhere. Zhang thought he could get the hang of handling it for a little longer. The monsters didn't have great defense or speed. Besides being invisible, they weren't that dangerous. And the attacks continued to be absorbed by the clones, even by Number 1, who was briefly commanded by the original. I realized that those monsters, although not dangerous, existed in large numbers. Even minor injuries, no matter how small, couldn't be ignored if they had much experience. All he knew was that he needed to get out of that place quickly, but he couldn't estimate if there were hundreds or thousands around them. That's when something caught his attention. A rift opened in front of him. At that moment, he understood that he had found Team Number 1. He shouted to the other clones to run toward what they were seeing ahead. However, the captain of the first team was startled to see someone. She was happy to see someone outside and told the others. In disbelief, they were satisfied because they heard that something was heading toward them. Everyone looked. They were people. There were many of them, but the captain also noticed that behind them were thousands of monsters. Everyone realized that this lunatic was bringing all the monsters toward him. Zhang shouted that he had come there to save them all, but then he shouted for them to save him too, please. The captain was preparing Team 1. She asked them to descend to support that person. They shouldn't waste time. A shield was set up so they could achieve their goal. Another member also activated his magic arrow skill. While one activated his shield to protect the team, the other attacked with magic arrows. Meanwhile, the original, controlling number one's body, and the others ran toward where team number one was. Everything needed to last just long enough for everyone to enter safely, leaving the monsters behind. Upon entering inside, he imagined he was safe. The leader asked everyone to come in so she could close the entrance. All the monsters were there, surrounding them. The captain just listened to his thanks, saying he was from the rescue team. It didn't seem like everyone was excited. Even though she was hesitant about the answer, she needed to ask if he was from Keenis. He only said that she was half right. His name was Jong Sangwoon, and he was there at the request of the Keenis Guild Master, Park Wontae. Everyone was happy because he hadn't abandoned any of them. Immediately, she asked if Songtae would be okay. He said that he was alive, but as far as he knew, he wasn't awake. Soon, she realized that this person had very strong ties with his team. She apologized for being so direct, but they needed to leave soon. Captain Park was waiting at the entrance of Odin's tower. He told her not to keep her waiting and that he had brought teleportation scrolls. However, the captain didn't seem satisfied about leaving. He, noticing her discomfort, wondered what might be happening. Upon looking, it seemed like the numbers didn't add up. They had been 10 at the start, and even though one had left, there should have been 9 left. The captain said it was shameful to have to ask for another favor. Even so, she asked him to help just one more time. He asked what she meant by that. She explained that one of their comrades didn't survive the mission. They said they couldn't leave that forsaken land behind. He started to think that was why there were 8 of them. He also expected that after hearing the report, one of them had been injured. That's when he asked if there had been a casualty. He asked what exactly had happened. The captain explained that there was an ambush. Their healer had been in the rear. One of them seemed to blame himself and thought that if he had focused more, he could have saved her. She recalled that when they were ambushed, he was the first one attacked. Maybe the monsters were targeting the person they thought was vulnerable. The captain explained that as soon as she realized the healer was attacked, she opened the dimension and ordered everyone to retreat. They wanted to fight, but if they had, there would have been no place for their comrades to hide. They used the telepathy scroll to report at the moment. It was so chaotic that they didn't notice a monster dodging. Then, eventually, after being wounded, one of their comrades was teleported to another dimension. Jong understood that it was at that moment they lost the extra scrolls. He also understood that the teleportation entrance closed before the others could enter. She said yes, and that if she left, the dimension would immediately close. That's when he asked where the member who couldn't survive was. She opened a small portal and showed where he was. Upon seeing where he was, he realized it wouldn't be possible to retrieve the person without dealing with the monsters. He thought that's why she had stayed there and given up on fleeing. He couldn't tell them to just go and leave the person behind. He agreed to retrieve their other teammate. He also said there would be a condition. The reason he was there was to save them, not to increase the number of casualties. He warned that if there was any chance of failure, he would leave alive. She agreed and said she was sure that wasn't what his comrade wanted either. Secondly, it was their responsibility to handle it. Even though she said it was too dangerous and wasn't asking for that kind of help, he told her not to worry about it. He explained that they weren't real people, they were just clones, leaving her very surprised. Meanwhile, in Agent Junwo's office, he was about to receive an unpleasant visitor. The vice leader of the Silverwind Guild was there looking for answers. He was extremely disappointed that the hunter bothering them was involved with that association. He asked him if being an enemy of the Haesung Guild wasn't enough. He warned that he should have stayed quiet after being expelled. Grabbing his arm tightly, he said he would ask again. Squeezing hard to cause pain, he wanted to know the name of the hunter who faced his guild. Despite being in a disadvantageous position, the agent didn't give up his hunter. However, Kang Cheon-sung continued to squeeze his arm. He said the next one would be the right arm. But at that moment, one of his henchmen came in. He announced that they had found information on the person they were looking for. The vice leader of that guild said they would find him one way or another. He had all the information about Jong Sangwoon. He also said that he lived in a great neighborhood and that they should send the boys to that address. Kim overheard them planning what they would do to Kang Junwo. She had no idea how that guild ended up in that place, but she knew it was very bad. The agent, on the floor, wanted to know why they were looking for the hunter Jong. Kang Cheon-sung mentioned that he had defeated some of their hunters and also asked if they had heard about Jewel Fathers. He also said that he knew the agent was known for being stubborn, so he wasn't sure if he would tell them. When Kim realized that what she did led the guild to take those actions because of the crystals she had stolen. Back to where team number 1 was, Jong was explaining that they weren't real, just clones. He made it clear that his clones were not mere illusions, so they didn't need to worry about their lives. He explained that it was plan number 4 and 6, where they would take the teleportation scroll while guarding the entrance to that dimension. He said not to leave under any circumstances. The most important thing was their safety. However, team number 1 wanted to help. Jong knew they were strong, but he was responsible for getting them back safely. The captain questioned this, as they had faced a group of violent monsters that led them in that direction. Afterward, Jong said he had a plan, so please trust him and wait. Yuna, looking at him, didn't seem to trust him much, but she had no other choice but to trust him. She also thought that ever since the portal incident, he had been focusing on increasing his stats like a madman, but he wasn't satisfied with just those stats. Captain Yuna asked if he was ready. He replied that he was and had a vial in his hand. thinking that it would always help him and make things easier. He asked to borrow number 4's knife. He asked them to grab the machete and the strength potion. He asked that as soon as they recovered the body, they should leave immediately along with the others. The captain warned that when no one was outside, the monsters just stood still waiting, and that could last for days. He also asked them to be careful. With a snap of his fingers, Jong created another dimension so he could go. Calling his clones, he departed. They were back on that infernal battlefield, with skilled and invisible monsters. Despite seeing the goal ahead, he wasn't sure if it would be easy to get there. He set out with his clones, but snow had fallen along the way. Before the final attack, he asked them to keep their distance and not approach the entrance. The team was impatient, as they didn't know if Jong would be okay and thought they should help. Although they had all seen him fleeing from the monsters toward them, that place was 40 kilometers from the entrance. He asked them to trust him for now and also said he had a plan in case things didn't go well. He could only hope it worked. Meanwhile, the monsters continued to attack the clones, incessantly, but he, controlling number 1's body, managed to block for the first time. The order was to keep pushing the monsters. However, they noticed that all seemed to be surrounding the body on the ground, which was their goal. Even so, it seemed difficult to reach it. One of the clones warned that danger was approaching. It seemed the monster's strategy was to surround them. Jong decided to use the strength compound at that moment. He drank it, and after a while, began having strange reactions. He felt as if strength was invigorating his entire body. He ordered them to attack all the monsters but to be careful not to hit the body on the ground. He activated the magic bullet power, a power that shoots a bullet filled with magic, aiming and launching it at several monsters at once. That explosion sent many monsters flying and briefly cleared the way. All that noise startled team number 1. They were watching through a dimension the captain had created. She asked if number 2 could move, and he responded that he could, no problem. She asked him to grab the person on the ground. However, the effects of the strength potion were uncontrollable. The mana fluid was so strong that it seemed like he was going to explode. Jong warned that it would attract attention, so they should just grab the body and get out of there. The clones quickly grabbed the body on the ground and were told to run as fast as possible. Number 1 was about to explode, and it was a matter of seconds before it happened. Shortly after, a massive mana explosion engulfed everything there. However, the 2 clones had the objective in hand, and they just needed to run to the dimension. The captain was happy because they had rescued their comrade. As soon as they entered, they started using the teleportation scrolls. However, they were warned not to use teleportation yet, as one of them was still outside. Despite the warning, they weren't worried because it was just a clone. They watched as he was alone outside, being attacked but about to explode. The captain wanted to stay and defend him, even though he was just a clone, but she was stopped. She tried until the last moment to reach him, but the teleportation scroll was already being used. Clone number 1 simply smiled, taking off his cap and saying they would all meet on the other side. Entering a state of explosion, the apostle exploded right there. The status window seemed to go crazy, calculating each of their statistics. In a different setting, someone was slicing fruit for Sonte. They also mentioned that today was the day they would execute the rescue mission. They commented that the mission could have been over by now and that he should wake up soon, so that he could greet the others with a smile. The young man, who had been still, started moving the tips of his fingers. Back to Team 1's mission, their arrival made a lot of noise. Park and the vice leader of the guild began to notice something strange. A dimensional portal was being formed. The two realized that the attack team was coming back. They saw something coming out of it. Despite having hope, memories from another time came to mind, of when only one person managed to come out, and even then, they were severely injured. He knew it wasn't the time for such hopeful thoughts. He needed to focus and wait for his sister to come out of there. His heart could barely take it. His vision was blurred, but he believed it was her. When everything cleared up, he realized his sister was standing in front of him. He could hardly believe it, and the tears could no longer be contained. Jong still had his familiar ability activated. However, it was the first time he experienced exploding himself. Back to reality, he saw that the siblings were fine, reunited once again. Yuna was happy to see her brother again. She asked him if he hadn't made too much of a mess in the guild while she was away. He was still trembling with emotion and ran to hug her as tightly as he could. Hugging her, he continued crying, telling her that everything was okay now. He said that everyone was back, and that reminded her that someone was missing. She started trembling and crying. She explained that she had lost someone too and said she felt guilty about it. She let all the tears she had been holding in for so long finally fall. She thought no one was going to save them. She said she was very scared. Her brother, hugging her, thanked her for coming back safely. This made her cry even more. In the hospital, the companion of the young man who was unconscious was greatly shocked, seeing him sitting up and asking to go back home. Elsewhere, they were getting ready to return. The clone handed the sword, potion, and teleportation scroll to the original, who was distracted, looking at his status window. He wanted to know how much his stats had increased this time. When Park came near him, he got a big scare. He could only thank him for doing what he said he would do. He felt embarrassed and said he only did the job he was offered. Park when he told him it wasn't over yet. He said he could contact him if he ever got into trouble because he would always help him, no matter what. The young man felt both honored and embarrassed at the same time. He tried to return the teleportation scroll, but Park reminded him that he had already used one to defeat the golem. Even though Park said he could keep the scroll, Jong didn't feel comfortable accepting it, so he handed it back. and Park simply tore it up and threw it away. His sister was still confused, thinking all the clones were real people and that they were lying just to calm them down. Looking at Jong, she wondered how much stronger he could still become in the future. However, as they left, she noticed how bright it was outside. Jong asked Park if he would be very busy when he got back, and he replied that he would be checking on their health. He also mentioned that he had a funeral to arrange. At that moment, everyone felt sad about the team member who was lost. However, Jong's phone wouldn't stop receiving notifications. He had been without signal for so long that now the messages were arriving one after another. One message caught his attention, saying that the agent had been taken by the Silver Moon Guild members. That shook him deeply, and now he only wanted to go after Mr. Junmo and seek revenge. He explained that he needed to return immediately because Agent Junmo had been kidnapped. He mentioned that he had a small fight with them before while they were trying to control the hunting field where he was entering. Park Won-tae gave him a teleportation scroll to go straight to the Silver Moon Guild. At first, he didn't want to take the teleportation scroll, but he needed to save the agent. Park Won-tae had already told him before that he would do anything to repay the favor. Meanwhile, at the Silver Moon Guild, Kim was watching the movement, asking why that scoundrel hadn't arrived yet. That's when she heard someone calling her. Someone was holding her neck tightly, intending to hurt her. He asked what he was doing wandering around there. That's also when Jong and his clones arrived. Driven by intense hatred, he copied that guy. Just as he was finding that face familiar, he was struck. Jong had returned with his clones, and he wasn't messing around. He only wanted to know where Mr. Junmo was. For that, he squeezed that wretched man's neck as hard as he could. With his blood boiling, he asked, "Where is Agent Nim?" No matter how much he tightened his grip, the man didn't speak. That's when Kim intervened, saying he knew where he was. Despite what the man said, Jong simply ignored him. The clones had already taken control of the entire area outside. He asked where he was, and Kim told him that the guild's vice leader had taken Junmo to the warehouse. Jong said it could be dangerous and asked Kim to wait there. He also said he wouldn't be long. After taking a serious beating, the agent was severely injured. They mocked him, saying he had fallen asleep. They taunted him, asking why he messed with that particular guild when there were so many others to bother. They asked if Mr. Jong Sang-woon was also curious when he would arrive. One of the thugs said it would take a while, and they might as well order something to eat. However, they started hearing noises outside. All the guards stood on alert. Kang Cheon-song couldn't wait to fight Jong. He arrived quickly, knocking down the doors. His expression wasn't friendly, and he asked if they were from the Silverwind Guild. The vice leader thought it would take a few more hours. One of the thugs asked if Jong was alone since he'd heard he usually traveled with others. The vice leader thought it was best to check sooner. Jong was amused but said he wouldn't hurt them too much. The agent was afraid for the hunter's life. Despite taking quite a beating, the agent hadn't revealed anything about him. Jong asked him to hang on a little longer. However, several thugs were hiding in various places, waiting to ambush him. That wasn't going to happen. Jong had just returned from a mission and was much stronger than before. He said he only wanted to do to them what they had done to Agent Junmo. With his much improved reflexes, he could take them all down in the blink of an eye. And that's exactly what was happening. The closer they got, the more people were severely injured. Kang Cheon-song was growing impatient with those useless thugs. Everyone was getting beaten, and he was filled with rage, ready to go after the next ones. At this moment, the guild's vice leader remembered the leader's words that they would be defeated again. However, he asked Kang to wait. He wanted to mention something as a precaution. He said he wanted to know where the crystals were, and then he would let the two of them go. The young hunter didn't know what they were talking about, but it didn't matter anymore because he had already reached his limit. Kang thought Jong was very arrogant. He said he had found a report in the office, a document about him. He admitted that Jong was somewhat strong, but since he beat up the C-class guys, he was somewhere between C and B. Looking at the stats, he saw they weren't bad, but the cloning ability wasn't much. He even started laughing at Jong's ability, saying who would fight with their head held high with an ability like that. Continuing to laugh, he said people like that became desperate for more stats. And he was sure that the guys following Jong had weak abilities too. He noticed, however, that people like them gathered in groups. Jong just watched, finding it amusing. Frustrated, Khan said he could test them to see if they were so weak. The agent was very worried about Jong and the clones. The thugs attacked the clones, but one of them whispered to the vice leader that he thought the guys outside had been defeated. Khan said at least they weren't at a disadvantage, as he didn't like beating just one guy with a group. Jong thought Khan seemed pretty confident and was about to see how good his ability really was. Khan started becoming transparent in front of him and said he wouldn't see it. Kang's ability wasn't something that could be seen. One of the thugs, seemingly an admirer, thought Kang's awakened ability was very strong. Apparently, the agent didn't know what that man's ability was either. Invisible, Khan said it was useless to sense aura or presence. All of that was nonsense. He asked if Jong had ever seen this before, saying he should prepare himself. He was very confident and said Jong wouldn't even react. The young hunter took a breath for a moment. When the vice leader was ready for the fight, Jong ordered the clones to grab Khan. He was restrained by two clones, and the others started laughing at him. Khan didn't even understand what had happened, thinking his ability was unbeatable. In a small bar, the friends were having a drink and chatting. They mentioned that they were already in their third year. They didn't even realize how fast time had passed. However, they still didn't have girlfriends, and they stopped to think. They asked if anyone had heard from Sangwon. One of them had heard news about the hunter job he was doing. The others could hardly believe he was doing that. Then one of them said it was because they hadn't seen him angry yet. And the story of what happened in the third year of elementary school was told. The bullies had tried to steal his money. It was said that when Sangwon saw this, he started to stand up to the guys. However, he didn't hit them. They just got beaten up together. Jaeon explained that he did this because he got mad since the guys were after him. He also said that if it was about him, Sangwon was generous. But if it involved someone close to him, he would transform. That's what was happening in that warehouse. While 2 of his clones had immobilized the vice leader of the guild, he told the others to take the agent to the hospital. Kang was still asking how he had seen him. Sangwon explained that he seemed very confident in that ability, but he had just come back from a group of monsters with the same ability as his. It was just as he had said before. He also thought the guy had talked a lot of nonsense in a short time. First, he said his ability was trash, and that he only trained because of it. However, amidst everything, he got one thing right. He only learned more and more to become the best. And he also had great stats. Saying this, he struck Kang in the abdomen. Not expecting it, Kang was surprised. He also felt the hit, which sent him flying far away, crashing into some boxes. The clones reported that one of them had fled, but they were already handling the rest. They told them the important thing was Agent Junwo's treatment. Looking at the man on the ground, Jong realized he could still move. Kang wasn't understanding anything. How was this possible? The report didn't say this. His strength was only 19. The others were also quite weak. There was no way he could have increased his stats so much in such a short time. Then he took a closer look and saw the vial in his pocket. At that moment, he already had a plan. Jong was no longer willing to hear anything coming out of his mouth. Kang assured there wouldn't be another mistake. He wanted to make sure Jong knew he was a Class B hunter with phenomenal stats. He soon began to transform and was very confident, saying he would show everything he had. Jong wasn't interested in seeing everything he had to show. Kang started moving fast, different from before. He didn't want to believe it, but he realized they were figuring out where he was by the waves he was making. So, he decided to muffle the sound he made while moving. Jong noticed that his speed was impressive. He also realized that all the chaos was to block the sound of his movements. As Kang got closer, Jong simply hit him on the head, and this time sent him flying again. On the ground but not defeated, Kang was laughing. He found it amusing, and Jong wanted to know what he was laughing about. Then he showed the vial, and said he wanted to see Jong ask something after this. He said it was strange to increase his stats so quickly. The vial was the secret, and he was going to drink it. Jong advised him not to do it. Ignoring the advice, Kang drank it all at once. His strength was incredibly altered. His ability to withstand power kept increasing. Ironically, Kang said he didn't hear what Jong said because he was busy getting stronger. Jong remarked that later there would be no point in blaming him. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.